Counselor Sanchez?
Here.
Counselor Foster?
Here.
Counselor Stubbs?
Here.
Counselor Grant?
Here.
Counselor Robeck?
Here.
Counselor Peterson? Here. Mayor Kintai?
Present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, I'll ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance by Counselor Peterson and an invocation. Counselor Oropesa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the agenda for February the 14th, 2019 City Council meeting to include moving item number 28, the First Amendment to the Project Services Agreement with the Roswell Chavez County Economic Development Corporation to be heard as item 22A, and the remaining agenda as presented.
I have a motion by Counselor Oropesa and a second by Counselor Peterson to approve the agenda, moving item 28 to item 22A. Any debate, discussion, or questions, councilors? Hearing none, I'll ask for a voice vote. An aye or yes approves the agenda as presented, and no or nay rejects it. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, seeing none, passes unanimously. Very briefly, I tend to always forget this, so I'm going to, thanks to Ms. Call, remember, let's silence our cell phones. And Ms. Call, you had attempted to ask all the counselors to update their contact information. If anyone has not done that, please get with Ms. Call, preferably before the end of the evening. Just let her know how she can get hold of you. And that's all I've got. Without further ado, I'll go into presentations. Mr. Nebb, did you want to start this first one? These don't have microphones.
Actually, I think we'll run through the presentation, and I'll hold my my input at till the end. So,
Hey, thank you very much.
so Megan, tell us. Megan, here's the. You know how to-
Mayor, City Council. I'm Megan Tejas, the kennel manager at Roswell Animal Services. I'm just going to give kind of an update of what we're doing currently, as well as address some of the concerns I'm sure you guys have heard about. As of currently, no ordinance have been changed. Our time constraints are as follows. From day 1 to 4, an owner is allowed to reclaim their animal. After that point, that animal goes up for adoption. From day 5 to 7, it's merely up for adoption. After that time, rescue can pull that animal. Rescue can pull on day 1, or tag on day 1, and at any point during that time. Some changes, improvements we've made within the last 2 years. We have adopted shelter standards throughout our facility. That would be how the animals are housed, how the facility is clean. We're currently open 7 days a week. On the weekdays, we are open till 6 p.m. to allow people who work a normal 8 to 5 job to be able to come in, reclaim, adopt, whatnot. The city has also hired a kennel manager, myself, and 3 full-time kennel workers. And as of Monday, I'm happy to say we are actually fully staffed, knock on wood. The city did get some complaints and concerns about being unable to volunteer, for citizens to volunteer in our facility. So we do allow volunteers. We have had a lot of people sign up to do so. Very limited people actually are coming in and doing this. But we have allowed it as far as cleaning, helping us maintain our facility, even doing some socialization with animals. I have put that out there on our social media page, which we have newly brought on within the last 5-6 months. We have a Facebook page that has every animal listed within it, within reason. Obviously, if we have some kind of hold or something that restricts us putting that on social media. Each animal has a picture. It's listed within their kennel area. Residents can also go on this page and they're able to look and try to redeem their animals. Also are able to know if their animal is in our facility after hours, kind of giving them a little bit of peace of mind. Myself and Amanda West are the two that typically run the page, and we work it pretty much 24/7. If someone's contacting us after hours, we still do respond and try to help as best we can with the information we are given. We are currently conducting off-site adoption events. We actually have one on Saturday at the mall. With the help of Rescue, we've been able to do them all during the cold months, which has allowed us to continue this. We have really good standing with our adoption events. We typically get about half of our animals adopted at these events. We're able to do on-site adoptions and tag for follow-up adoptions on Monday for those that require a little more input into their adoption. We're also having rescue volunteers come to those events to help us walk animals, get them out there, kind of help us educate a little bit. We also have rescue people who are volunteering us crates, lending them to us so that we can get the animals out to these events. We also have a daily assignment list in the police department records, the RMS, where people can actually log in and they're able to see what all we have within our facility as well with the information listed. This is just a screenshot of typically what our Facebook page looks like. Like I said, each kennel has their own photo album, and on that album it lists what information they would need to contact us with, how much it would cost to adopt or reclaim an animal, what would be required to adopt or reclaim an animal, such as a sterilization agreement, if they need to prepay based off the age to have that done. Also, if you click on a page or a picture of an individual animal, you also get the kennel number, you get an impound number, you get the gender, you get the breed, approximate age, weight, where that animal was picked up to hope that a reclaim could happen, when it was brought in, when it goes up for adoption. All that information is readily available as soon as they click on a photo. I'm also able to help a little bit with our quarantine animals through this Facebook page. Animals that aren't readily viewed by the public. It has helped me get them out to rescue as well as if I have a particular adopter interested due to injuries or whatnot that I can't have it out in the public view. And then this here would be a typical list that we can print off from our RMS. This has the log of every animal that's listed. As of February 11th, this is what it looked like. You can also see that it lists what rescue group has that animal tagged, how long that animal's been here, just some general information. If we have more than one rescue listed on an animal, we also go ahead and list that too, so that it is computerized as well. All right, and that is all from me.
Okay, Mr. Nebb, did you want to add? We have two people that have signed up to speak on this, but go ahead, Mr. Nebb.
Yes, sir, thank you. Mayor, City Council, yeah, I wanted to bring this thing all the way back around as well too. Megan did a great job of sharing what all we've been trying to do for the last year and a half out there at the facility and trying to do our jobs better. And if you remember, one of my first forum meetings that I had was animal services, because that was an area that I believe that we could improve upon and do a little bit better on. So we invited the public in, had that meeting to try to discover what they were feeling about this. And so on Monday of last week, or it was last week, yeah.
No,
it
was 4 days ago.
Oh my gosh. You know, today is a city council meeting on Thursday, and it just feels like we've had about 3 weeks in this one little week. But Monday night, we sat down with our local rescues because I really believe that when we're challenged with some of these current events, it becomes a communication issue. It really is that not everybody's understanding what is happening. And so the idea is that we bring in the group together. Our shelter is set up with staff operating as acquiring the strays out in the field, maintaining the strays and trying to get them adopted or rescued, or, you know, the worst case is that they have to be put down. And so the idea is we rely heavily upon the rescues to do the job of getting these critters out of the shelter at the end, if we can't find an adoption. Just really quickly though, during that meeting that we met with the rescues, the code has not changed. We have a 7-day hold in our facility. In 2016, the City Council allowed for a not to exceed 21-day window to try to give the rescues more time to get those animals out there. What has happened in the current events here is that some have perceived that 21 days as being those animals will remain for 21 days. And that's not really the truth. Our hold is 7 days. And that was where the communication breakdown, I believe, started with that. And I'll talk just a little bit about that briefly, really quickly. But I think that's where we just broke down on the communication. The code has not changed. Staff have and are performing their duties in accordance with our laws. There is nobody over there that has acted independently of what our code and what our law is. I said, I want to make sure that you understand that. We take those accusations seriously, and we will review every staff member that somebody believes has acted inappropriately. I have big concerns with our rescue system. We have 77 rescues on file, and only 2 of them have local addresses. And as you think about that, our 2 local rescues, they essentially serve as brokers for all the other rescues in the nation. And so when they find an animal that may be adoptable or rescued, they put that all call out to all the other rescues. And so when you look at the list of how many of them are actually tagged, those are ones that somebody else wanted. And so what our rescues get stuck with, as it gets closer to that 21-day window, as it progresses in there, the seriousness of that animal's life becomes more in jeopardy as that time goes along. But we have only 2 rescues really working to pull these animals out of there and get them out into the public. Out of 77 of them, only 2 of them are local. And I believe our rescues, it was really good to talk to them on Monday and understand they put an all call out there. And then as the time clock ticks, it gets more serious as that call comes. And the challenge we have is there's a lot of different reasons why we need to do what we have to do for the letter of the law. And so I think that we really have to look hard at that system. The hold in Roswell of the 7 days is as good or better than almost every state out there that has a mandated hold. At 7 days, we match up to almost every other state out there. Missouri, the state of Missouri has a mandatory hold of 10 days. We have a mandatory of 7 days. We have actually allowed for up to not to exceed 21 days. And I believe that should be noticed and recognized because we're matching up to a lot of them, and I'm assuming that's how we established our structure when we established it early on. New Mexico has no mandatory hold within the state statute, just so you're aware of that. And so we're better than the state. All right. I just had to get that out there. All right. Just really, my goal from here is to really help our rescues understand the importance that they serve within our structure. Our job is not complete without the rescues. We're not trying to do a rescue service. You saw what Megan is trying to do on social media, trying to put those faces of those animals out there so that they can be adopted. We've had very good service from that, and I think the rescues would also state that we had a really good run for about 6 months here that we were getting more animals out of the shelter and into adoptions or rescues, and I believe we're still doing that. I think that what gets challenging is when the communication breaks down and things don't actually function. But really my goal now is to make sure that they understand, because we have a contractual obligation with, or a contractual relationship with those rescues, that they have to have the rescue, they have to be a 501c3, they have to have transport agents, they have to have fosters, all listed on this document. And, and my only other problem with those agreements is that some of them go back to 2013, and I'm not sure if all the names on those lists are no longer valid. But I really believe that I just wanted to make sure I covered all of this as well too, because we've worked hard at trying to improve that service. I don't think anybody can take that away from it. We still have a ways to go. And our goal has been, and I've said this in almost every email I've responded to, we want every animal out of that shelter as quickly as we put it in there. And if there's no animal there, then we do not ever have to euthanize an animal. And that's my goal. I just don't know how we're all going to get there unless we're all talking about it. So, Mayor, City Council, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nebb. Councilors, I actually have 2 individuals that signed up to speak on that. I would like to go to them at this time before I turn to the council for comments and questions. I have Anna Edwards and Joe McNamara. If you'll go ahead and come up here. Yeah, you have 3 minutes to speak. 3 minutes. Do we have either of these individuals? Okay. Go ahead. Come on. Come on. Don't be shy. Go ahead. That way, if you're right behind them, we move through this quickly because this is the first item, and we're going to be here long after everyone else goes home. So go ahead. When we begin, state your name and your address, and you've got 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. My name is Joe McNamara.
Okay.
28 Mystico Lane in Roswell. And Mayor, City Council. I just wanted to come and speak in support of the animal services that we have here in town. I've seen a lot of talk in these groups, pointing fingers, naming names, and a lot of the animal, there's one in particular that gets a lot of abuse. I wanted to, speak out for them. I think they do a good job. I've worked with some of the rescues. I've been in there pulling animals as a foster. I've seen how they work. I think they do an excellent job, and I think maybe whoever's in charge or whoever communicates directly with these rescue groups might want to come to some kind of agreement where they're not publicly abusing the employees that work there. They're just trying to make a living. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. Go ahead. Just state your name and your address, and you've got 3 minutes.
My name is Anna Edwards. My address is 1212 West 7th here in Roswell. And Megan, excellent job. She's been doing a fabulous job down there. But the city acknowledges this, there is an animal population problem in Roswell. Dealing with only the current influx of animals, euthanasia versus adoption rescue is only a Band-Aid. Longer-term solutions must be sought, including but not limited to widespread education, lower no-cost spay and neuter, microchipping, stricter animal control ordinance enforcement. Trap, neuter, and release programs help reduce feral cat population, but is illegal in the city of Roswell, as far as I know. Many communities throughout New Mexico have found ways to offer nominal adoption reclaim fees that include spay, neuter, vaccinations, and microchipping. I'll make the same offer to you that I've made to Mr. Nebb through email. I will offer my services at no cost to the city to visit with some of these cities and find out how they've done it. What the costs are involved, what the benefits are, what the startup costs are. I'll be willing to do that at no cost to you. I would only ask that if you take me up on that you be open to implementing some of these services. There could be and would be some growing pains in the beginning. However, the future benefit in lower numbers of animals in the shelter and increased adoptions, increased reclamations will catch up within a few short years. The city will be seen as progressive in its treatment of animals, providing a positive view to potential companies looking to relocate to Roswell. The city has invested approximately $7.5 million for the new Civic Center, $12 million to the new rec center with an anticipated $23 million total for the recreation center in anticipation of future dividends. Let's do this for the animals too. Just invest the money. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilors, I have Councilor Sanchez and Councilor Oropesa. Councilor Sanchez, you have the floor. It is? Yeah, but I'm not sure we're getting, yeah, you might, can you get a little closer, Counselor? No, closer, please. It's not working, okay. You want, Counselor Roebuck, you want to try your microphone? Thank you.
Yes, some questions on the information that was presented. Can we as counselors get that information? We've gotten a lot of emails, and sometimes, you know, we should take that responsibility and respond, but I want to be able to respond with the right information to those that have sent emails in.
There we go. All right.
Mine's working, you can borrow it.
No, that's all right. Mr. Mayor and Councilor Sanchez, absolutely. I get a daily report now from Animal Control, just like the one you've seen up on the screen there. It shows me a list of every cage, what animals are in every cage, what's tagged by a rescue at that time, how long that animal's been in the facility. I get that every afternoon from Animal Control.
And just the final, with that, we did a presentation with the rescues on Monday, and that had the information of the unclean animals section in our city code, and it also had all of the criteria for the rescue agreement. And so that information in there, I'll make sure that I'll send it again to make sure that everybody has that, because if you have that information, then that kind of helps understand how that time clock ticks through there. We actually shared a timeline of this because, you know, for 8 days, the animal is, I mean, it's in a hold waiting for the owner to reacquire it, potential adoption, and then I believe that everybody's work starts at that day 8 on, and we really want those animals out of there as quickly as possible because that helps the health and safety of the shelter and all of the animals involved. So we'll make sure that you have that information so that you're able to respond appropriately too, because I tell you, a lot of the times, if you look at most of those emails and responses we've had, have not come to me, they've come to you. And so we'll make sure that you have that information. Yes, sir.
The other question is, what does it cost to adopt an animal?
I believe our adoption fee is $40, plus the cost of spay and neuter. And so.
What does that cost?
The cost of spay and neuter varies from vets. I believe when we acquired our rescue, we were in it for about $150 for what we picked up a puppy out there. Tore up the house, but she's okay. But yeah, I believe that the spay and neuter is the high dollar amount, you know, because even with the rescues, we're providing those animals to the rescues for $1 a piece, because we're trying to make it so that the animals don't stay long. We have a $40 for the adoption fee. We are talking, I think, like Ms. Edwards has spoken as well too, about some other options. We're talking about that because it's really not a dollars and cents thing to us, but we want to have, we need to have that information to make sure that who's acquiring that animal is a responsible person that can maintain the animal as well too. And I think we heard that from the rescues as well too, is people get involved with the rescues, but then they find out the commitment that comes with it is more than what they were willing to take on. So, yeah, so.
I believe that happens to people that acquire a dog. They realize that it's a lot of responsibility to be able to feed it and take care of it. So, and sometimes they they can't do that.
Yep.
So they do away with the dog. If they take it to the pound or wherever they, they do that.
Yeah, and I think the nice thing is that, the city has a lot of restrictions on making sure that it's a responsible person. The rescues do the same thing, and I would say that in some cases, the rescues are more stringent than even the city is. So,
Okay, and the last one is, can you explain what sparked the issue with the animal services?
certainly. We had an animal that had 19 days with the shelter, and it was chosen to be euthanized. We actually had 4 chosen that day, and as we looked through them, one of them, and I can speak on cages, but one of them actually received a call from a rescue saying, we want that animal the same day of when it was going to be pulled for euthanization. We had 2 of them that were essentially brothers that came in from the same litter. One of them actually had on the back of the card, somebody had went through the shelter and had expressed interest. They had not stated that they wanted the animal, but they had expressed interest, and so that animal was pulled off of that list as well too, and a phone call was made going, are you still interested? And that animal was adopted out. The other one was not so lucky with that and was selected for euthanization. However, these were county strays, and so back in January, because of this relationship we have, because we actually operate the shelter as a county-wide service, so the county can bring in animals as well too. But what we've asked for is we track a chain of custody of those animals, the ones that are coming out of the city, the ones that are coming out of the county. So we are now, as of January, we are redelivering those strays that are from the county back to the sheriff's department. And then they're able to do what they think they need to do with them as well too. But that animal, we believe, according to the county, was euthanized at one of the vets here in town. And so I don't remember exactly what happened with the 4th one, but the question from the rescues is that they have always considered that 21 day as being a mandatory hold, and it is not true. The clock kind of ticks, and right now we're a little slow, so the question was always, well, if the shelter is not full, why would we euthanize anything? And we're looking at a lot of different methods as to what happens there. The health and safety of those areas are really important as far as the cleaning of those cages as well too, the enclosures. I shouldn't call them cages. And that was something that we heard from about 1.5 years ago. We were not maintaining that facility to a level of what we should. In the last 6 months, we implemented standards of operation that come from the New Mexico Animal Shelter Society Association. I'm not sure, I don't remember the name of it, but we implemented those standards because we want to hold our shelter at a standard. If you remember the complaints that you would receive on too hot, too cold, not comfortable, and stuff left in the enclosure, and so the idea was we're going to hold ourselves to a standard for those standards because we're hoping that those animals will be adopted out. And so what happened is that this animal, the rescue was out there looking to try to find somebody to acquire that animal. We didn't really know, because the communication was not being talked about. I believe they could have found somebody for this animal. And so I think that's where the frustration comes from the rescue side of saying, well, why pick this one for euthanization? And if you look at the list that's up there, in my mind, I think it should trigger in all the rescues' minds, if it hits 17 days in that facility, there is a very serious issue there if we can't get them out of there. I believe that, and I use a color code for that timeline, that is very important to see, because if you look up there, and this is the challenge these rescues have, we have animals up here. For the first one on there is a lab that's 15 days in the shelter. Hasn't been tagged, but if you look at the bottom, they've tagged the 2 19 days that are on that front page. We actually had, I think this week, some animals tagged at 3 days. And so if they get the tag on it, then that helps protect what is going on. If we would have known, and I really believe that if we would have known that they were going to try to find somebody for this animal, it would have helped us hold that animal a little bit longer. And there's a series of things that we've already talked about staff-wise to help improve that, but that is what happened with this current event that caused the uproar to the level of what we've seen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, I have Counselor Oropesa and Counselor Best. Counselor Oropesa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Sanchez basically asked the questions that I was going to ask, but just for the sake of the public, can you address what tagging means?
Certainly. Certainly. We have 70 enclosures in the animal shelter, and so each one of them have a number. And so when you go and visit and you walk through the shelter and you're looking for your forever pet, you have the ability to go up to the front in the office and put a tag on the animal. We have a board, essentially it's a big board up on the wall. It has hooks on it, and it has all the cage number, all the enclosure numbers on top of it, and you can go in and put a tag on it, and then that starts a different direction for that animal. And we actually have some, I don't see it on this list, but we have some that we have had both rescues tag an animal. And so then it becomes a first in time system is that right there, unit 44 and 45 is that we have a first in time there for these two breeds here. And so if they go in and tag the animal, then we know that there is interest. And you know, and I will not take anything away from these rescues, because the more I learn about what they have to go through in order to even have these animals taken out of our facility or any other facility, it's a network that is they're constantly talking. But so that's what the tagging does. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Counselor Best, and that exhausts my list. Counselor Best, you have the floor.
The best for last. What can I say? I was kind of in the beginning of this deal. I've taken a lot of calls, a lot of emails. Mr. McNamara, I'd like to thank you for recognizing our employees, our staff, how clean the kennel is now. I believe it's, like you said, been a year and a half back that we really got the gist of what needed to happen, and we buckled down and we started doing it. It didn't fall apart in one day. It didn't fall apart in 2 days. It takes many days to build it up and put it back to where it needs to be, plus go on. Years ago, rescuers weren't a thing. You know, I worked there, I'd say back in the 80s across the street, and rescues weren't a thing. They came in, they went out. It was what it was. We're cleaner now. I have asked that a few cages be empty, personally myself, which doesn't count, but if they're empty and they dry out and we use some sort of UV light or something, we have less diseases. And that's what the whole thing is about, less diseases. I greatly appreciate the rescuers that came on Monday. You made it much easier for us because you communicated with us. You didn't scream at us, you didn't holler at us. You know, we didn't do the Facebook thing. The Facebook thing really, really makes me mad. And Joe, Dennis, and a few of the others know how mad it makes me, because it spreads all out there, and whether we're Roswell, New Mexico, or Roswell, Georgia, we lose our tourism dollars that come in here that we need because you're trashing us. You're trashing us, and we don't need to be trashed. And I don't know whether it's Roswell people, Colorado, a lot of it's Colorado people. But anyway, social media needs to just come to us, talk to us. We'll talk to you. You know, talk to us rationally. Don't scream at us. Don't throw us under the bus or whatever. Ms. Edwards, I'm kind of liking to know what your background is, where you feel you can go out and teach how to breed and all this with the animals in Roswell. I mean, you offered your services. I'm curious on what if you'll come up, I'm curious on what your services are. And you have to come up because we have to have it for our minutes. That's my main question, because you offered to help us. So I kind of want to know what your background is so you can help us.
Okay, my offer was not to go out and teach. My offer was to go out to other communities that are doing the low-cost spay and neuters. This is an investigative function. My background is I was an investigator for State Risk Management. I was an investigator for New Mexico Municipal League. I investigated claims against public entities. I know how to gather a wide array of information and documentation, excuse me, and bring it back and present it.
Okay.
So that's my background.
Okay, thank you. That enlightened me a lot, and Joe will probably get a hold of you because that will help us tremendously. Almost everybody else in the audience seems to be really calm and understand what we're speaking about, except one young lady next to Ms. Edwards, and she's just shaking her head and saying no, and I don't want you to go away unhappy. So you're good. Okay, so if you're not, please come up and talk to us. I'm sure that. Perfect. Call us. Come on, okay.
All right, Counselor, we're not going to engage in. All right, that exhausts my list. I do want to throw out one statistic, or actually two statistics, that I was doing research for a video interview. In 2018, our animal shelter took in 2,347 dogs. 2,347. 212 were euthanized. 212. That's 9%. I'm very impressed with that number, and I think we should keep that in mind. So, thank you, Mr. Nebb. All right, item number 4, Mr. Nahar.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My presentation tonight, I've been asked to share with you some of the traffic signage. Basically, it's going to be the frequently asked questions about signs that I get in engineering, either through the constituents or through you, and the citizens have called you. Common traffic requests and concerns. Engineering department is the department to contact with any traffic concerns. Once we get a complaint or concern and we do the investigation, everything we do is based on the manual uniform traffic control devices, commonly called the MUTCD. The latest edition is 2009 with 2012 updates. This is the national standard for traffic engineering, and I believe this is the 86th year that it's being used. And it's always being reviewed by the Federal Highway Works Administration, which is the federal DOT, and lots of study, a lot of reference, lots of things have come to make this manual uniform traffic control devices in the traffic engineering world. The engineering department uses traffic counters. What you see there is a traffic counter. It has 2 loops, and when you go over the loop, it tracks the type of vehicle you are. It also tracks the speed, what direction you were going, and like this loop can get both lanes at the same time. And typically we run a study for 7 days, 24 hours a day, and I can tell you how many cars per hour, average speed, 85th percentile speed, and we have our little device there that we go there and download. Also, for certain warrants, and the manual uniform traffic control device has a thing called warrants, so when there's a request, the request has to be warranted. So we also use Roswell Police Department accident reports for doing an engineering forensic review. One of the ones that we get is stop signs. I get common requests. We have a speeding. Why don't you put a 4-way stop? Why don't you put some more stop signs? MUTCD section 2B-04, right away at intersections. Yield or stop signs should not be used for speed control. The other thing is with MUTCD, if the city happens to do something in contrary to MUTCD, a smart attorney realizes that, and we open ourselves to liability when we do not follow the MUTCD. One of the ones, another common one is 4-way stop requests per MUTCD, warrants include 5 or more accidents in 12-month period that could be corrected with an all-way stop. The major leg street averages 300 vehicles per hour for any 8-hour period. The combined 200 pedestrians, bicycles, and vehicles per hour for any 8-hour period. Conflicting traffic has a sight problem, and there are some other warrants. So you can see quite a few things there. The accidents, that's when we get the accident reports from the police department. There's 3 engineers in the engineering department. All 3 of us review it. All 3 of us read all the reports. And then we discuss what we interpreted from all the accidents. And again, there has to be a major volume of traffic to meet the warrants for a 4-way stop or all-way stop. I'm going to give you an example. The most recent, Poe and Lee. Got the complaint that put a 4-way stop at Poe and Lee. Okay. Called PD, got a hold of the accident history for the last 3 years. There was 2 accidents in 2016, 5 accidents in 2017, 3 accidents in 2018. All 10 accidents were due to Lee Street drivers. Okay? So, just want, that's from the police reports. As we read the reports, one of them was joyride. One of them, mechanical failure. The lady lost her brakes. There was a few that said, I thought we could make it across. So, as I interpret that, as staff interprets that, how will a 4-way stop help that? We did put larger stop signs. That's the largest we can put, 48 inch by 48 inch. Due to the wind load, it requires 2 posts. After reading the reports, since it was all Lee Street drivers, put the additional plaque, caution, Poe traffic does not stop. Again, we could go ahead and put a 4-way stop, but if there's an accident, and there typically is when you put in a new 4-way stop, then we've accepted the liability since we didn't follow MUTCD warrants. So I just want to share with you the process, and that was one of the most recent examples. One of the other ones that we get is no parking. We want some no parking signs. It makes sense. Most of the common complaints are around the schools. This is on the west side of the recently completed Parkview. And when we do put up the no parking signs around the schools, if you remember, or if you weren't around, there is a city ordinance that allows free stickers for residents. So if you happen to have a house that says no parking 7:30 to 3:30 or 7 to 4, Monday through Friday, all you have to do is come up to engineering, show us your registration, your ID that you live at that house. We'll give you a free parking sticker. We even give you a temporary, so when the plumber comes over, Meals for Wheels comes over, so whatever, they have a little temporary hanging sticker, absolutely free. Now, if the mayor comes and wants a parking sticker for his cousin or his niece that wants to park there, no, we can't do that. It's for the family that lives there. And when we get a complaint about parking, we take the complaint, we do a site review, we usually do multiple visits to verify. The most recent complaint I got now is Roswell High. Well, Roswell High has been a common complaint on and off over the years, so we're going to go check on it and see if those complaints are due. Not for the Pennsylvania signs that I just put up 2 weeks ago, but now they're starting to head to the other side, the west side of the schools. So we'll check it out. One thing I have found out that one of the most common complaints is 4th and Washington. It's not the parents, it's the staff. Some no parking is due to site restrictions and intersection efficiency. Again, we'll review it case by case, and we'll go out there more than once to check it out. Another request that I get is children playing. I want to slow children at play. The MUTCD does not include children at play or any variation. Why? Studies show signs do not reduce the speed of traffic or make drivers more observant. It gives a false sense of security. As a motorist, you should expect children in a residential area. Again, liability of nonconformance of the METCD. And I know Aaron and Parker are already busy. We don't want to give them more business. But that's something that a lot of people don't realize. The children that play signs, they are not validated by the METCD. Speeding. We get complaints about speeding in every part of town, every neighborhood. That's one of the most. Again, we discussed traffic calming, infrastructure. We've discussed it, I think even I made a presentation here. Other towns have traffic calming. The biggest thing with traffic calming is there's a buy-in from the neighborhoods, and that buy-in also includes monetary buy-in from the neighborhoods that want to do that, or if we reduce the roadway, we put more landscaping, that somebody takes care of that. When we've introduced that to here at Roswell, the council, and some of the forums, the response has been negative. If we were to do speed humps, again, a policy that Roswell doesn't do, just to do 16% of the streets, just to install would be $4.8 million. And we're not talking the maintenance and any other thing that would happen. Of course, depending on the speed hump, our emergency vehicles would not like it when they go across it trying to get to somebody's house in a hurry. Currently, the plan is complaint is taken, do, again, multiple site reviews. If I think it's warranted, you'll see the traffic counters put out there to verify, and then we just received the radar signs, and you'll see an installation like that on the upper right that were just delivered this month. The thing with the radar signs, they are solar. We can put them in the ground and pull them up to the next site. But they not only flash the speed of when you're going, they're also traffic counters. And I can put them on stealth and not have the speeds there and see what happens, how people are driving with it in stealth. I can turn it on, and with the speeds flashing, see what effect it does, then turn them off and see if people learned or if it did change their behavior. It was discussed at infrastructure, and council, you have this option. We can always add the camera in the back. So when somebody goes by, we'll take a picture, and we'll send them a friendly letter, and we'll help pay for these traffic radar signs. And when we do a speed study, I share it with the PD, police department, and they know on 8th Street, they know on Sycamore Street, whatever street it is, when's the best time to have an officer out there to make it worthwhile for the PD to go out there and do an enforcement. Traffic signals. I put this picture up for fun. This is a traffic tree. Traffic signals are very delicate. METCD dedicates a whole chapter, a big chapter, to the warrants and studies. In the past, the city has had the New Mexico DOT assist with warrant study, or a developer like Walmart, we have them pay the study. On a simple four-legged intersection, it's probably about $500,000 for a signal. You add more lanes, you add more pedestrian stuff, you add audible signals, the price just goes up. I met with the DOT Wednesday, well, that was yesterday, they were here, and the next study that I've asked them to do is the intersection of 8th and Main. Traffic's picking up over there, so I will say over the past 20 years, we've probably done 5 studies over there. The DOT's done on our behalf, and it's never met a warrant. Maybe now, but we will investigate it. We will have, the DOT will have a warrant study on file, but we are going to look at it. And this picture for fun, what happens if traffic engineers are not around? Thank you.
All right, thank you. I have Councilor Foster, and that's the only one on my list. Councilor, you have the floor.
That last page, I've driven there. It looks like Sicily or Catania. I've been there doing a U-turn in the middle of that. Could you turn back? Well, I have a couple of questions. So the first one is on Princeton and Union. We have a crosswalk there. And We have it signed for crosswalk, and we have a flashing light. We still have, I've gotten parent complaints that, of people driving through with kids in the crosswalk. And so one of the questions I have, can we put up a sign that says yield for pedestrians in crosswalk? I mean, you'd think that the yellow sign with kids in the crosswalk would mean that, but we might need to spell it out for them.
Well, the international sign is the person walking in the crosswalk, but I'll go look at it. But typically, we would go with the international sign, in case you can't read English.
Yeah, in the morning is when it happens. In the afternoon, there's actual crosswalk person there. But in the morning, this parent said she stood and had people yell at her, and it's like, well, first of all, I'm in the crosswalk. You just have to stop anyway, but they don't do it. So.
And I assume this is Monterey School?
Yes.
Thank you.
The other one, could you go back to the 2016, 2017, and 2018 accidents for Lee and Poe, right there? Okay, all 10 accidents due to the Lee street driver. I have a question. The logic on that is, if there's a stop sign and a person pulls out and there's an accident, it's the person that failed to yield at the stop sign, right?
Correct.
So tell me an incident where it would be somebody on Poe that it'd be their fault, because it should always be the person with the stop sign. So saying the reason we didn't put a four-way stop up there is because they were due to the Lee Street driver. Logic tells me that all of those accidents are going to be blamed on the person that didn't.
I can see what you're alluding to, but as we read the reports, and the officers do very good work, they interview the people that were involved. In the report, vehicle driver number 1 or 2, or whatever it says, I stopped, I saw the car coming, and I thought I could make it.
And
So,
but one of the other, I
And- and
understand the
there-
situation, because if you looked also at the times, it's probably between 7:30 and 8:30, and between 3 o'clock and 3:30, just because a lot of times there's a lot of traffic there with school, Roswell High letting out. And those people are backed up and sitting there for a long time.
we looked at the times, we looked at the ages, because I also look if they're senior drivers or they're under 25 drivers. And in this case, I think I had 1 senior, 2 under 25, and all the rest would be what I call experienced drivers.
We've got Captain Taylor in the back. If you'd like to know what the police department looks at when they're having an accident,
Yeah.
because he might be able to shed some light on so.
But like I said, saying that the logic portion of it, to me, it's always going to be the Lee Street driver's fault, because they're the ones that have the stop sign. Now, if it was a four-way stop, tell me, if there was a four-way stop, would we have had those 10 accidents? That's my question.
I'll start off by saying I'm not a traffic engineer, so this is definitely his area of expertise. I understand what you're saying, Mr. Foster, and obviously if there was a four-way stop, then you would have east and west traffic stopping, so that could make it not the north and south traffic's fault if there was a four-way stop. The way we conduct an investigation is we get all the totality of the circumstances, the drivers, the speeds, the direction. So there could be a vehicle that was making an improper turn off of Poe onto Lee, and it would be their fault if that was the case. Also, speeds can be taken into consideration. If a vehicle is traveling at a high rate of speed, I believe it's 30 miles an hour on Poe Street. So if a vehicle was traveling extremely fast, 50, 60, 70 miles an hour, obviously the vehicle that has the stop sign is going to stop and look. They think it's clear, and then all of a sudden a speeding vehicle comes. So that could actually be a cause for the east and west traffic to be at fault. Obviously, they have a stop sign. They have a duty to make sure the intersection is clear before they proceed. But if vehicles are traveling at an extreme high rate of speed, then that driver's not going to be able to know that the vehicle's coming at that speed.
And that's interesting because I do recall in the last 3 years, we did have a high rate of speed PO, traveling on PO, and had an accident, and so it's not listed here. I understand what's been posted on Facebook. I'm not sure I can believe all that I hear that but I do know the people that have posted it, that they've said they've seen 6 accidents in the last 6 months. And so those are the things that kind of concern me. But my other problem I still have is we have a 4-way stop at Washington, and we have some cars still accelerating. So I can understand where judging a car and their speed when they're accelerating coming into this intersection, you see them going slower and then they're speeding up, and then you go and have the accident. I still say that 5 on 2017 tells me that we can legally put one there and not be, because it says 5 within a 12-month period. There's a lot of interest, and there's a lot of people. This is a fight I met in 2012, I believe, trying to do this because we've had so many. And I hate to say that I don't trust this number, but I'm somewhere in between. I think for some reason, if we're not, there were accidents that weren't reported, but supposedly the ones that they said, there was RPD at every single one, so.
All I can say is I call RPD, this was delivered to my office, that's all I can review.
All right, well, but like I said, with this 5, we still are under fall under that whatever liability. I think that we could justify still putting a 4-way. I hate the fact that we keep having these accidents, and the people in the area are upset. I happen to live in this area. I don't go that way in the mornings or after 3 o'clock just because I know how busy it gets.
And I sympathize with you. Again, I was surprised when we got this many, but that's the facts, and I can't argue with the facts.
Right, but the facts still show us that we can justify putting a stop sign.
Well, if you go by the past 12 months, then it doesn't qualify anymore.
Well, 2007.
Anyway, that's my presentation.
You need 12 months. All right, thanks.
Councilor Sanchez, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Nahar, how many people have taken advantage of the stickers around, do you know, around the?
I'm going to say about 5. In all the schools, we've issued 5 permits since, 2015 or 16, whenever we did. And like we just did the one in Pennsylvania on the east side of Roswell High, prior to putting up the signs, engineering department personally took the flyers to every house. And then I got a call from one man, told him where to come and get it. He never showed up. They're still sitting there on Bernadette's desk waiting for somebody to come over and pick them up.
I also received a call for parking permits, and I told him to go see engineering, so I don't know if...
Yeah, we've only issued, I think in the past 2 years, Counselor, about 5 permits.
Okay. The other, it's not a question, you know, Mr. Foster was talking about Princeton and Union. I live right there in that corner. And I have seen the lady, she goes kind of early, about 7:30 maybe. And she does stand there and she records if the cars are coming real fast. And I remember my granddaughter, because they drop her off at the house and then I take her to school, walk her across, that she was telling me that that lady was standing out in the street yelling at a car that had gone by. So sometimes they do that. They do just go by and they don't stop. So I just wanted to give you that information that it is happening. Okay, thank you.
All right, that exhausts my list. Let's move on to item number 5. Councilor Oropesa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There you go.
Funny.
Mr. Mayor, I move to hold a public hearing and vote on proposed ordinance 19-1, which provides for the change of time for future city council meetings.
I have a motion by Counselor Oropesa and a second by Counselor Grant to have a public hearing and vote on proposed ordinance 1901. Mr. Holloman, how you feeling?
Counselor, I'm doing better. I got more of my voice back than I had at the beginning of the week, so I think that's always an improvement. Tonight, we're asking you to hold a public hearing on ordinance 1901. This relates to the time of the city council meetings. Just for a little bit of background, with the move, Lord willing, in March, we'll be in the new facility. And with that, because we have people that might rent the space, there was the beginning of the conversation about being in the new location. Do we want to have a new time? Do we want to have a new day? That discussion happened at the December 21st meeting. At that meeting, I believe the consensus of the council was to wait and see as to the day, but there was interest in changing the time of the meeting. The time of the meeting is set by ordinance, so in order to change it, we would need to change the ordinance. As drafted right now, the proposed ordinance 1901 would change the time of the meeting from 6 o'clock to 5 o'clock. So the vote, without making any amendments, would be in favor of changing it to 5, would be in favor of the ordinance. To leave it at 6 would be to vote down the ordinance. And with that, I'd stand for any questions.
All right, councilors, I'm going to go to the audience here since it's a public hearing. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. As such, even if you have not signed up to speak, I will ask if anyone here wishes to speak in opposition to this proposed ordinance, please come forward. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Let the record reflect no one came forward to speak in opposition. Anyone wishing to speak in support of this proposed ordinance? Anyone to speak in support? Let the record reflect no one came forward to speak in support. Anyone wishing to speak on this ordinance at all? Anyone at all? Let the record reflect that no one chose to come forward to speak on this matter. All right, councilors, I have Councilor Foster. You have the floor. You're there. You're good.
Okay. I understand the idea that if we can get in earlier, we don't get to midnight. But my one major push is that we are more open to the public, and a lot of people get off at 5 o'clock. I mean, there's a lot of people that work all different schedules. And so I am opposed to this just because I think the 6 o'clock gives people time to get off work and then get here. We have had lots of public participation. I know our county has moved to the morning, and they don't have as much public participation. And I think for open government, we should stay at least 6 o'clock. So thank you.
All right. I have Councilor Henderson and then Councilor Grant. Councilor Henderson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I speak against the ordinance also because I think that if we just continue to crank back the time, I think we just find ways to fill up the space. And I think that we need to maybe look within our own operation and see if there's ways that we can minimize the amount of time that we spend. We certainly want to give full debate, but occasionally we get off on items that are not germane, and I think that the chair can control that. I think that we do have better participation at a later date. It gives our people that are business people a chance to arrive here and express themselves. So I think overall, I think that we can continue to meet at 6 o'clock, and I think it benefits the public more.
All right, thank you. I have Counselor Grant, and that exhausts my list. Counselor Grant, you have the floor.
Yes, I obviously support this, moving the time up since my 9 a.m. I did at work earlier. But I do still want to try to change to where we can add public participation sometime throughout the meeting to where they don't have to be here at the beginning. I actually think we should have put this item about 30 tonight and see where the debate was when we get there about 11 o'clock tonight. So I obviously would love moving it forward as long as, and also would like to make it to where public can sign up at another time during the meeting and not have to be here at the beginning. And I also hope that legal is still working on the resolution to include more consent items that we don't have to belabor unless there's really an issue that a counselor wants to talk. So that might help move some of these large agendas like we have tonight. Thank you.
Okay, that exhausts my list, counselors. Oh, Counselor Roebuck.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question. For us to change our policy about when people sign up and stuff, that's not governed by ordinance, that's simply a policy, is that correct? So if we decided to say let people sign up by email or something like that, we can make that change without having to go through this whole process?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Right, I have no one else on my list. We will have a roll call vote. A yes or aye approves the ordinance. A no or nay rejects it. Once again, a yes or aye approves moving the starting time to 5 p.m. A no or nay rejects it, and we keep our starting time at 6. All right, Ms. Call, please call the roll.
Counselor Best?
Yes.
Counselor Oropesa?
No.
Counselor Henderson?
No.
Counselor Moore? No. Counselor Sanchez?
No.
Counselor Foster?
No.
Counselor Stubbs?
No.
Counselor Grant?
Yes.
Counselor Roebuck?
No.
Counselor Peterson?
No.
Motion fails.
All right, I don't have oh, there it is. I didn't have one for Counselor. All right, fair enough. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, items 6 through 15 were approved as part of the consent agenda that Counselor Roebuck referred to. And now we are on item number 16. Counselor Best.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to consider the approval of Resolution 19-08 for the transfer of a surplus cab and chassis from the city of Roswell to Otero County.
You're a little.
Yes.
Okay. I have a motion by Counselor Best and a second by Counselor Foster to approve Resolution 1908. Chief Graham.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This isn't a very flashy item on the agenda, but it is one that I appreciate your consideration for. What we're asking you to consider tonight is to transfer a non-operational cab and chassis from our inventory to Otero County. The truck was originally purchased in 2008 as a rescue vehicle. We used it for several years in its capacity until the engine on the truck itself became mechanically inoperable. We did a ton of work to it and it continued to be inoperable. So what we opted to do was remove the equipment off of that cab and chassis, purchase a new cab and chassis so that we could place a new rescue unit in service. The trucks that we're talking about, the top picture there is the cab and chassis in question that we're asking to be transferred to Otero County, and the truck on the bottom is the unit that we built from the equipment off the original truck. The truck that sits on the bottom picture, to purchase that outright, would cost anywhere from $180,000 to $220,000. We were able to complete that project for right around $70,000. The truck right now is considered to be valued at around $15,000 with the repairs to make it operable around $20,000. The truck is in Albuquerque, so we would also have to consider the retrieval fee for that, which is about $750. Public Safety Committee recommended 3-0 during its January meeting in favor of this. I stand for any questions.
All right, councilors, any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll ask for a voice vote. All those in favor of Resolution 1908 as presented signify by saying aye. All those opposed say nay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Hearing none, seeing none, passes unanimously. Next up, item number 17, Councilor Grant.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion for approval of Resolution 19-09, authorizing the certification of correctness of the fiscal inventory of assets for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2018.
I have a motion by Councilor Grant and a second by Councilor Henderson to approve Resolution 1909. Ms. Garcia.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. We have another housekeeping item before you. This would authorize the certification of correctness of our physical inventory of assets, which we do every year at the end of the fiscal year. Each department has sent out a inventory and asked to remove anything that they do not have or to add anything that is missing. This, of course, is something that we have to do for DFA, for our New Mexico statute, and it has to be certified by the governing body. We did look at this at Finance Committee, and they recommended approval 4-0. I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions or comments, councilors? Seeing none, I'll take a voice vote. A yes or aye approves Resolution 1909, a no or nay rejects it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, seeing none, passes unanimously. Next up is item number 18. We're going to take this a little differently. Mr. Nebb, why don't you explain?
Mr. Mayor, City Council, even as of today, we were still receiving questions from different councilors on this item and this topic. Staff has not had time to put all of the information to answer all the questions of the individuals that were not participating on the General Service Committee. And so it's my recommendation that we table this and allow it to move back into just some additional vetting, and we'll go from there. I apologize for doing it in this manner, but we would like to answer all of the questions associated with any of these items. So,
okay. Do I have a motion, Councilor Grant?
Yes, I make a motion to table to send that back through committees, and I say committees as a plural just because it might need to go through more than one, and to come back at a later date.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilor Grant to table. Do I have a second? Do I have a? Okay. Oh yeah, I see it now. Thank you. I'm sorry. I apologize. I have a second by Councilor Foster. We're on a motion to table this matter to send it back to committees for further discussion and review. Is there any debate or discussion on the tabling motion? Tabling motion. Okay, I see none. This can be a voice vote. A yes or aye approves the tabling of this matter where we go back to committees. A no or nay rejects the tabling motion, and we would continue with action on the matter. All those in favor of tabling the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. I have, okay, all yes. Thank you. Going on to item number 19. Councilor Oropesa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, I make a motion for approval of Resolution 1911 supporting the City of Roswell's application for federal funding for a roadway project, which is North Atkinson Avenue from 2nd Street and north to Cherry Street.
I have a motion by Councilor Foster, a motion by Councilor Oropesa and a second by Councilor Foster to approve Resolution 1911. You're on. Don't be shy.
Okay. Well, this resolution is in support of an application for roadway funding through the DOT. It'll be matching funding. The city will have to contribute a little bit. It's for a project on North Atkinson Avenue between 2nd and Cherry, about a half-mile long project. The way it works is this is part of my application that I submit. It gets reviewed by a committee, a local transportation, actually a regional transportation committee, and they grade them and rank them. There might be 5 other places that submit, and their recommendation goes to the district engineer at the DOT, and they make a final call. So this resolution doesn't really give us money or commit to us spending any money. It's more in support of my application, and it's necessary for the application. You're not going to win unless you have this attached. Let's see, this is the second time we submitted this exact same application last year, and we won a committee, and then the district engineer gave it to someone else, saying he wanted to spread the money around a little more. So we'll submit, that happened last year. We're going to submit the same thing this year and see if we have better luck. This last slide is just the condition of the roadway. It's going to be a little more extensive work than some of these projects. That's why you end up with a $1.5 million project for only about a half-mile of roadway on really only a 2-lane road. The breakdown, the DOT always has $1 million, so that's how we come up with the 65-35 split. We're going to have to take out not just pavement on this one. We're planning on taking out base course and even going down below and replacing some of the subgrade. Atkinson, we try to get a lot of uses out of. There's an extra wide shoulder you can kind of see there. It's a bicycle route. Part of this project will also do your standard ADA upgrades at the corners and improve the sidewalks, and then restripe it. Okay, that's it.
All right, thank you. Councilors, any questions or comments? Seeing none, hearing none. Oh, I have Councilor Orpesa. Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a matter of clarification. You know, you said this project would improve the sidewalks, but if there's no sidewalks, are they going to be installed?
We'll fill in the gaps. There's one spot in the middle of the project that has a bridge that we're not going to touch. The bridge is sufficient. We just, we don't have millions of dollars to just replace that bridge for no reason. But other than that, we're going to put in sidewalks everywhere else. So.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I will ask for a voice vote. A yes or aye approves Resolution 1911. A no or nay rejects it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, seeing none, passes unanimously. Very good. Up in item number 20, Councilor Stubbs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is at the recommendation of the Legal Committee that I move to approve Resolution 19-12, terminating an agreement A-91-9 between the City of Roswell and Chaves County.
All right, I have a motion. Councilor, if you'll hit your vote box for the motions. Says make motion. And yeah, okay, we have a motion by Councilor Stubbs and a second by Councilor Foster to adopt proposed resolution 1912. Mr. Morris.
Good evening. This agreement is an agreement between Chaves County and the City of Roswell, and it was signed back in 1991. And basically, it directed city staff to prepare and complete demolitions of derelict county properties. The agreement calls out for the county to file a lien on the property, and then we would get reimbursed after that lien had been settled. We feel that this is this agreement is kind of problematic, and we'd like to review this type of action as we look at reviewing the ETZ possibly during this year. This was an attempt in 1991 to help clear the corridor between the southern property, or the southern municipal boundary, and the airport. That's still an issue today, and so we'd like to do it in a more holistic way. This did go to the legal committee, which recommended approval 3-0 on January 31st.
All right, thank you, Mr. Morris. Any questions or comments on this matter? I don't see any. I will ask for a voice vote. A yes or aye approves proposed resolution 1912. A no or nay rejects it. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, seeing none, passes unanimously. All right, up next is item number 20. Councilor Grant.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion for approval of Resolution 1913, authorizing the execution and delivery of a master lease.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilor Grant and a second by Councilor Foster. Before we start, Mr. Graham, you want to go ahead and make the amendment?
Yes, I would go ahead and like to amend the motion to the document that you were emailed out today, and I believe we have a copy of it here as well.
Yep.
That was handed out by Ms. Call. So I would like to make an amendment to replace this current resolution with that, the updated one.
So I have a motion to substitute for Resolution 1913 as in your packet with the version that was handed out. It has titled Corrected Version Item Number 21. I have a motion to do this amendment. Do I have a second? I have a second by Councilor Foster. So we are now on the substitute resolution. Chief Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What we're asking for you to consider this evening is the purchase of 11 new cardiac monitors for the fire department. The equipment that we're replacing these monitors with have become obsolete and outdated. We purchased them about 10 years ago. These pieces of equipment, we carry on all of our apparatus, and they respond on every call, and most calls they're utilized. Last year we responded to around 9,500 calls for service, 90% of those being EMS, so that number of calls is the number of times that these get pulled off the trucks and used day in and day out. They are more than just a cardiac defibrillator or monitor. They also have some other capabilities. The new pieces of equipment that we're asking to purchase will increase our capabilities in the field. The monitors that we're purchasing have the ability to transmit telemetry from the scene of a cardiac arrest or a medical scene to the hospitals, and so that the doctors in the ER can make a interpretation of that EKG tracing, which reduces the time that it takes for the patient to get from the ER to the cath lab, thus improving patient outcome. And so I know we had a little bit of a wrestling match with the resolution and the language, but that is in a nutshell what we're asking you to consider tonight.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Holloman, you want to articulate why we had a little bit of a wrestling match and what we've accomplished with this? And I recognize it's probably my fault as much as anybody's.
Part of this was it was brought to our attention after the Finance Committee meeting that it was unclear because some of the language in the document said purchase agreement that was attached, and then the resolution itself said lease. So what we've done is cleared that up so that it refers to the correct document, which is the purchase agreement. And then I think that an incorrect version, we just modified it so that it was clear that this was being adopted and purchased through a cooperative purchasing agreement with Zoll, the company that we've used, has an agreement with. So it just laid out what the path of the action was going to be.
And Council, for full disclosure, this morning I met with Mr. Holloman and Ms. Call, and we had the issue was brought to my attention. At my request, a substitute resolution was prepared. What was in your packet, what was passed by the Finance Committee, I don't like the idea of trying to just substitute another version. So this is a little more complicated, but I think it's the more appropriate way to handle it. So we are on an amendment. So this will first, we will act upon the amendment, and then we'll take final action on the resolution. So with that long, laborious explanation, anyone wishing to comment on this? If seeing none, we will first approve the, vote on the amendment. A yes or aye amends the resolution that was in your packet by substituting the corrected version. A no or nay rejects the corrected version, and we will go back to the original resolution. All those in favor of the corrected version amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Seeing none, hearing none, we have now adopted the corrected version as the matter. We will have to take an additional vote. Any questions or comments before we do the final action? Seeing none, I will ask for a voice vote. We are now voting on the corrected version, which is the substitute for the original resolution. One more minute. Okay, you already know. Okay. And a yes or aye approves the resolution, as substituted. A no or nay rejects it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, seeing none, it has passed unanimously. Next up, item number 22. Real quick, councilors, just notice that item number 22 and 22A, which had originally been item number 28, are the same, essentially the same topic. We will probably just have one presentation, but we will take action separately. So going to item number 22, Councilor Grant.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 19-14, instructing staff to continue working with the EDC to provide funding in the amount of $368,000 to upgrade services provided by the EDC.
Right. I have a motion by Councilor Grant and a second by Councilor Peterson to approve Resolution 1914. Ms. Garcia.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Resolution 1914 is a budget amendment for $368,000 from the Airport Reserve Fund. Of course, we want to continue with EDC and provide funding to reimburse the facility for upgrade of services. This is upgrading building number 60 within the RIAC to meet the current codes and needs of our manufacturing company to be located within. So this is the first part, which is actually the money that we're asking for. We did talk about this at our Finance Committee meeting, and it was approved 4-0. So I'll stand for any questions.
Mr. Cadillon, you want to talk a little bit about why we're doing this and briefly let the, yeah, it's more like 28. Go ahead, I like that. Go ahead to 28. That gives everybody a total background.
Okay, so Mayor, councilors, what's going on with the structure is we have to update the fire suppression system, which typically we do a 6-inch fire line. And the typical cost of those type of deals are, you know, $16 to $18 a square foot. But the use of this facility, we had to go with an 8-inch due to the demand on the system. And that's running around $22 a square foot, which is one of the items why it's higher than it was originally presented. The other item was the roof. The roof has a lot of issues with it, and we thought that we were going to be able to do a light system on that. Come to find out, the degradation on the roofing deck and everything was so wet that they had to completely remove the deck and totally replace the roofing system. The other thing is with the upgrade in Excel's electricity out there, that still has the old pot transformers, the oil filled transformers within the facility. So therefore, the entire electrical system had to be upgraded, which was a cost of about $128,000, which in typical remodels, we would be about $25,000 to $26,000 on that. So there you had another $100,000 hit there. So for the most part, that's it. The rest of it is all just general, you know, they're gonna upgrade some bathrooms, do some painting and replace the HVAC, but all those prices all came in standard within the original budget, so.
Okay, and Mr. Holloman, you want to go ahead and talk about the agreement that's being, we'll do a separate action on that, but while we're talking about this whole thing, let's put it all in context.
Sure. And I think Ms. Garcia already covered it. It's a two-step process. Number one, we need the budget amendment to have the money. Number two, we just need to amend the agreement. The agreement says that we had the original amount funded that could be increased by approval by the governing body. So that's what we're asking you to do is, in the first instance, approve the budget transfer to provide for the money, and the second, to amend the contract to reflect what we've done. Thank you.
Okay, and one more item. Mr. Nebb, you want to talk about the offer from the EDC? It's not a firm offer because they haven't had their meeting yet, but I think if you could advise the council.
Yes, sir. In the concept of a true partnership, the EDC has their executive board approved to include $50,000 from their account into this project as well too. That's how much they believe in the project. The full board has to approve that before it's finalized, but they shared it at the Finance Committee, and so I'm happy to share that there, as well as the ammunition company is inputting $13,000 to help with the painting as well. So it's a really good partnership for that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Neb. I have Councilor Oropesa. Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess for my own clarification, are we talking only about Building 60 at this point?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is Building 60, which was the Red Mountain Arsenal agreement with the EDC for the lease agreement. So,
okay. So where the EDC, I lost my numbers here. I saw $600 and something thousand on the contract.
correct. And as Mr. Dillon explained, a lot of the difference within our our initial estimate was 300 and some odd thousand, close to 300,000. We missed our estimate. So the request is the total amount when you add all these costs together is 668. We're not on the right slide, so. But yes, yeah. So from the initial approval of the city council, the total cost is 675,000. Thank you.
So my question is, where is this money coming out of general fund, or is it coming from the airport, or?
No, sir, it's coming from the Airport Reserve Fund.
Airport Reserve Fund.
And it has approximately?
Yes, we have approximately 1.1 million in that account right now. We've only had one ask previously for a budget amendment for 110,000. So fiscal year 2018 ended with 1.3 million left in the reserve for the airport. We've used 110, and now we're asking for 368,000. The other 307,000 is being absorbed within the current budget.
General fund?
No, the airport reserves.
The airport reserve?
Yes. The 368 will be airport reserves. The other 307,000 that you've already approved is being paid out within the current budget. So we're not asking for reserve money, and it's all through the airport fund.
Okay. And this is an emergency type of situation? Is it a necessity that needs to be done like right now? And the reason that I'm asking this question is because we know the airport authority got, or at least the bill, from what I understood, got signed by the governor. And so I know there's a process we got to go through with the airport authority and so forth and so on. But is this something that we can wait on until we find out what the airport authority, whether the airport authority actually is going to be created and take off or not?
The real quick answer is no, it cannot wait. The contractors have already been mobilized within the building for doing the work that they need to. Red Mountain, the lease agreement with Red Mountain, we're time sensitive to get that business into that building. I would say that the authority conversation does not have any impact on this agreement at all. The agreement would turn over to the authority if the city council chose to initiate the authority. And so the action still, there's no new money if an authority is established. And so the conversation will have to continue. So this agreement is here and now, and if we don't act upon it, then we have a project that's not going to function well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have Councilor Foster and then Councilor Grant. Councilor Foster, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. My understanding with this is that Red Mountain's coming in, they're going to provide industry, they're going to hire people. They're actually going to be renting this building at a market rate, unlike a lot of our buildings out at the base. And all the money that we're going to get the rent back is going to be paid right back into the airport fund to pay for, and it's going to be paying for these renovations. So we're getting jobs, we're getting a business, and we're essentially improving our own property so that we can actually increase revenue at the airport. So the airport fund may take a hit right now, but they're going to get it paid back from the years of a building that's going to get actual market rate rent. So this is a win-win for us. So I understand it kind of hits us that we're a little off on our estimate, but it's still a great thing for the city and a great thing that we're bringing industry into the city and jobs. So thank y'all.
All right, and I see no one else wishing to speak. Once again, we're going to do this in a two-part. First, we're going to take action on Resolution 1914. This is a budget adjustment to allow for the transfer of for an additional $368,000 from reserves to be used for this project. A yes or aye approves Resolution 1914. A no or nay rejects it. I'll go with a roll call vote on this one. All right, so Ms. Call, please call the roll.
Counselor Best?
Yes.
Counselor Oropesa?
Yes.
Counselor Henderson?
Yes.
Counselor Moore? Yes. Counselor Sanchez?
Yes.
Counselor Foster?
Yes.
Counselor Stubbs?
Yes.
Counselor Grant?
Yes.
Counselor Robeck?
Yes.
Counselor Peterson?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. Next, we'll take action on the amended project services agreement. Any questions about this for Mr. Holloman? This is a written agreement between the city and the EDC, and what we're basically changing is the dollar amount in the agreement. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, so we're just changing the dollar amount to reflect what has previously been presented. So a yes or aye approves the proposed changes?
Make a motion first.
That would probably be an excellent idea. Thank you, Councilor Grant. I appreciate you catching that.
I'd like to make a motion for approval of First Amendment to Project Services Agreement with the Roswell Chaves County Economic Development Corporation to increase money up to $675,000.
All right, I have a motion by Councilor Grant and a second by Councilor Peterson to approve the project's First Amendment to the Project Service Agreement with the Roswell Chaves County Economic Development Corporation. My apologies, councilors, for getting out of order there. We'll go with a voice vote on this one. A yes or aye approves this First Amendment, a no or nay rejects it. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, seeing none, passes unanimously. We are now on item number 23. Councilor Grant.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 19-15 to formally establish the city's health insurance premium coverage level.
I have a motion by Councilor Grant and a second by Councilor Henderson to approve Resolution 1915. Ms. Gilbert.
Good evening, Mayor, councilors. The city offers 3 health insurance plans currently with 4 types per plan, so the types being employee, employee spouse, etc. We also offer dental and vision, which are offered at the employee's full expense, so the city doesn't cover any of that premium cost now. The coverage options available are determined by ERISA, which is a state agency, so we are not able at this time as a city to select which plans we offer. That's what's decided by ERISA. What we can decide as a city is how much of the premium cost we can cover of what that cost is for each plan. This item was reviewed at Finance Committee, I believe in November, where we just went through what we have now. We looked at different options for different types of models for how to pay that premium. And the direction at that meeting was to proceed to continue to do what we do today. So the resolution you have before you simply reflects how we pay our premium coverage now. And I'll just walk you through it just so it's, hopefully you can understand. It's a little bit interesting how we do it because we pay by a dollar figure. So it's not a percentage base. We have a certain dollar amount that we pay for each plan. So that dollar figure is the same for each plan, no matter what the premium cost is for the plan. But the way that this will work is we will take 75% of the full cost of the most expensive health plan. Currently, that's our PPO plan. And that will set the dollar amount that we utilize for the other two less expensive plans. So the same dollar figure will be used for all three. The resolution will give direction for future increases from ERISA. We expect that typically every year we see some sort of increase. Last year it was 4%. If we stick with the 75% as our basis, the increase will happen and we will still cover the 75% of that new amount. However, the resolution does give some flexibility to the council in cases either way. So if the financial situation of the city is very good and the council wants to be more generous with the budget to allow for the city to pay a higher dollar figure per plan, it allows for that. And conversely, it allows for a reduction in the dollar amount in years where maybe the city is not as financially stable. In addition, the resolution also includes dental and vision insurance being remain paid by the employee in full, so the city doesn't pay anything for that premium, which is what we do today. The life insurance and administrative fees will also be covered, entirely by the employer, the city. That is how we do it today. And the short and long-term disability will be covered entirely by the employee. Again, that's how we do it now. So the resolution is just simply kind of formalizing how we do it today. And just to give you some dollar amounts, this is our current structure for FY19. That first section is the 3 different types of plans we have with the 4 types: employee only, employee spouse, children, and family. We have 2 HMO plans and 1 PPO plan. And then you can see the dental, the vision, and then the kind of other things there at the bottom. So if you look at those last 3 columns, you can see the breakdown of the employee costs, the city costs, and then what the percentage is now. So on the PPO plan, those last 4 rows in that top health insurance section, you can see the percentages there are not all consistent, but they're around 75%. That's how the 75% was chosen for the resolution. So sticking with this information, looking forward into FY20, that's the rates that you would see. So you can see on those same rows, the percentage is 75%, and then that works into the breakdown between the city and the employee. And that those same dollar figures that you can see there, the 223.18, the 502.16, are the same dollar figures we use for the less expensive plans. But you can see that because they're less expensive, the percentage that we cover on those is then higher. So that would be the outlook for FY20. As we know now, we have not heard from ERISA, although we expect to very soon, to hear if there is going to be an increase in our premium cost. But that is the methodology we would use to determine how much we pay and then budget accordingly. And so with that, I will stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? I have no one on my, Councilor Orpesa. Yeah, all right. That just got flipped. I'm sorry, Councilor Orpesa, you double tapped it and Councilor Sanchez got in the way. So we'll go with Councilor Sanchez first. Councilor Sanchez and then Councilor Orpesa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the employee cost, is that every 2 weeks?
Yes, these rates here are every pay period. So we have 26 pay periods, but the cost for this is only taken for 24 of those pay periods, so twice a month. So for those extra 2 pay periods, we don't deduct anything.
All right, thank you.
All right, I have Councilor Orpesa. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the resolution, it says that on fiscal years when revenue is exceeding projected amounts, the city may elect to cover a higher amount, and by the same token, if the revenues are down, then the city can also lower the amount. Is this an issue that is this an issue for collective bargaining? Will there be an issue with collective bargaining if indeed the revenues go down? And the city has to determine to lower the payments?
You want to?
Well, yeah, currently within all the collective bargaining units, we discuss that we will provide health insurance. We do not establish the percentages within the agreement, the union agreements. And so currently there would be no problem with the unions at this point in time. All of our agreements do cover that we will provide insurance but it does not establish the amount. It allows that the city council has that right based upon funding and everything else in order to move that number. And so there's no change within that, those union agreements for that purpose.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I have Counselor Peterson. Counselor Peterson, you have the floor.
Yes, on the dental and vision, is there a reason why the city doesn't pay anymore?
As long as I know, that it's been like that, where the employee pays 100% of the cost. Why or when that was changed, I don't know.
Could the city pick up 75% of that?
That would be at the election of the council to budget funds for those purposes.
Yeah, because if you look at the vision, you know, the employee only is $2.85. You know, that'd be nice if the city could pick up the cost of some of that.
Yeah, Councilor Peterson and everybody, I think what happened here, and if you look back at how health insurance came in and everything, generally health insurance was covered by the employer and the employee. They looked at the dental and the vision as add-on types of coverage. And they came in there, and now they're becoming more mainstream, I would say, but that is why they're there. As far as how you want to adjust them, that's what we're trying to do here, is to standardize it so that we have an idea of how to budget. So I would say that the city council has every right to adjust whatever numbers up there you wish.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I have no one else wishing to speak on this matter. I will call for a voice vote. A yes or aye approves Resolution 1915 as presented. A no or nay rejects it. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, seeing none, passes unanimously. On to item number 24. Councilor Stubbs.
It's not going to congratulate me. You're not going to congratulate me on hitting my button?
Oh, thank you, but you got to do it verbally too.
First time I think I've ever done it ahead of time.
Well, it's all right. Wait a minute. Time out. All right, yeah, we'll do this.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Sorry about that, folks.
I'm sorry, too.
All right, go ahead, Councilor. You have the floor.
Mr. Mayor, this, what? I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, this proposed ordinance has been through both no, this isn't the one. It is the one? Okay. That's gone through public safety as well as through legal. So at both of those recommendations, I move to re-advertise for a public hearing at the March regular city council meeting for proposed ordinance 1811, modifying chapter 16, which is nuisance, and adding a new article 4, nuisance properties, and providing for severability and effective date.
All right. I have a motion by Councilor Stubbs and a second by Councilor Henderson to authorize approval to advertise for a public hearing and vote on proposed ordinance 1811. Mr. Morris will give the presentation. I do have two individuals who have signed up to speak on this. So after you get done, Mr. Morris will go to the audience. Go ahead.
This ordinance is intended to create another means of addressing nuisance properties. These are properties that are that have a history of creating a need to respond either through public safety or code enforcement. And really the intent is not to be punitive, but to really to correct specific issues that are happening on those particular properties. And nuisance properties, as defined in this ordinance, are defined as places that have 3 or more documented nuisance activities as determined by either Chapter 10, which is the criminal offenses, or Chapter 16, which is the code enforcement, at a particular premise over a 12-month period. As stated, the intent is to be able to try to contact the property owner to discuss an abatement plan in order to resolve the outstanding issues or problems that are occurring on site. As stated earlier, Public Safety did hear this on January 15th and recommended 3-0 to approve the ordinance, and Legal Committee also heard this on January 31st and voted 3-0 to also recommend approval, subject to some final revisions that were added throughout the entire process. And we'll stand for any questions.
All right, I have two individuals asked to speak. Ladies and gentlemen, and council, once again, we are only acting on an authorization to advertise for a future public hearing and vote. That we're not taking final action on this proposed ordinance tonight. I have Mr. Riley Armstrong and Mr. Larry Conley have signed up to vote, to speak. So if you'll come forward, gentlemen, you will have 3 minutes. I'll ask you to state your name and address. Go ahead, sir.
Riley Armstrong, 3619 East 2nd. Mayor, council members, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. I don't want to go into specifics. And my point is to plead with you all to vote in favor of holding a public hearing. And I'm not sure that even one public hearing might get it done. I'm not going to go into the specifics of this ordinance and the ramifications that there possibly could be. I do understand the purpose, but I believe everybody needs to understand what could potentially happen with the ordinance as it's written. I'm not going to tell you that it's bad, but I'm not going to tell you that it's really good as it is. And my plea to each of you is to consider to have the public hearings. We want to try to get as many people as we can to attend those. This is a big deal for Roswell, and I think most of you understand that. So I just want to say thank you, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, sir. All right.
Larry Conley, 2815 Canto Drive. I'd just like to say that I hope we do have public hearings. This is something that's long overdue. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I have signed up to speak here Councilor Grant, Councilor Foster, and Councilor Stubbs. Councilor Grant, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I had reached out to Mr. Morris, and Bill, I don't know, did you send, because obviously we cleaned up this ordinance from last time it came to us.
Correct.
Referencing the nuisance ordinance, because obviously last time the list was a little bit too long, and then the multiple citation things and all that. My only concern is, I kind of felt like the list last time was too long, and this time it referenced a 41-page document of all the nuisance. Did the committees even look at that?
No.
No?
Councilors?
That's what I thought.
No, we didn't look because the ordinance is using a reference to existing chapters which are not being touched. We're not recommending, and we didn't discuss specific changes or what those things were. We did talk about in generalities what they were included. There's police and then there's code enforcement.
How'd this go through two committees and you didn't even look at the list of what the nuisance is when it's the nuisance ordinance?
I think it was felt that we understood. We did have discussions about generally what they were. There were discussions about, weeds or trespassing, and comments were made like that, but there was not a...
Well, I would just encourage that the council needs to read through that document before passing that, and it boggles my mind that it went through two committees, legal and what was the other one, safety?
Public safety.
And we didn't read the what it's regarding. I'm not disagreeing with it, but it's a pretty lengthy document that even gets into more details than the issues we had last time.
And understand, like I keep saying, that these are existing chapters right now that properties can be cited for through the code enforcement and public safety processes. It's not new. And so the idea was we're just trying to reference that. And you're right, the first version was a condensed list of even this one, which went on for a couple of pages.
Right.
So the idea was try to create something a little bit less text heavy. But what you have in that attachment are the Chapter 10 and Chapter 16 violations as basically a 42-page document that goes.
Kind of how this is how that started, of targeting some of the problem issues, and now we're including, we're referencing a massive document that covers a lot of topics. So I would just encourage the council that needs to read through that to make sure before, and I'm in support of the idea of what we're doing, don't get me wrong, but just makes me a little leery that no one else up here has probably read that.
I have Counselor Foster, Stubbs, Oropesa, and Henderson. Counselor Foster, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually had read through them, and I saw them, and I saw the shift, and I wasn't happy with it, but also my first point of order to speak was it did not pass through Public Safety 3-0. I was a nay. It was a 2-1 vote. I'm on the record, and I'm actually on the RDR record as I was a no vote on that.
Then I stand.
And so part of it was there were some things. In legal, we did correct some of the stuff that I didn't like. I'm still not the most comfortable with it, but and that being said, I also think that, and I hate to do everything through 8. When we went through the legal, we did correct enough that I was way more comfortable with it. And I'm still uneasy about it, but I do think that a public hearing, listen to the public and see what they have to say. Thank you.
All right, I have Counselor Stubbs, Oropesa, Henderson, and Roebuck. Counselor Stubbs, you have the floor. Can you get her microphone working? Counselor Stubbs' microphone is not working.
Thank you, Councilor Henderson. I think Councilor Grant called to attention basically what I wanted to, and that was the culmination of the 2 ordinances that are basically referred to in this new proposed ordinance. And I think the other thing I just wanted to say to council as well as to the public, it's my understanding that the city ordinances only cite for misdemeanors. There's no criminal intent here with any of these. So these are all misdemeanors, and they do cover only the city ordinances. So thank you.
Counselor, thank you. I have Counselor Oropesa, Henderson, and Roebuck. Counselor Oropesa, you have the floor. All right, are we going to need to take a recess? Because I'll be candid with you, Mr. Nebb and Ms. Call. I am a little bit disturbed that our IT department has not tested all the microphones of the governing body. So I am ready to take a 5-minute recess if we have to. Do you have a microphone, Counselor? Okay, we'll keep going for now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I do have reservations about this amendment as well. And if we're going to have an advertisement for next month, I would like to suggest to see if legal can get us some information, because what I read on the information that I read, a lot of it is addressing the owner, and I don't know about the other ones, but I think there are certain federal guidelines and state guidelines, if I'm correct, that govern the tenants, that also govern the individuals that rent the facilities, and I would like to see
what those rights are, the renter's rights, because what I understand right now, a landlord cannot go into a person's house just for the sake of going in or to trying to correct or do whatever. There are certain guidelines that they have to follow to be able to address issues with the renters. And that I didn't see in the proposal. And so if we can get that, I would truly appreciate it.
Yeah, Councilor Oropesa, I'll look into that and make sure that you have that information.
Thank you.
Okay, I have Councilor Henderson and then Councilor Roebuck, and that exhausts my list. Councilor Henderson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I just, if Riley Armstrong would detail some of the objections or some of the items that are in the ordinance prior to our hearing next time, if we would have an opportunity, Riley, to see what some of those suggestions are that you might make next month, but give us a chance to digest those prior to our hearing.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor. I have Councilor Roebuck, and that exhausts my list.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to go for the hearing. I've had a lot of constituents express a lot of concern about this, and I just would like for the staff and councilors who are fighting to get this through. We just need to make sure that if we have to make sure that it's beyond the ability to be abused. Otherwise, it's going to be a really, really tough sell. I know that the intention and the desire and what you guys are trying to do is important and it's good, but we got to make sure we're using the right tool for the job. So just that with that caveat, because I've already heard it from a lot of my constituents, a lot of dismay about this policy. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I have Councilor Oropesa again. Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, in previous years and certain issues, instead of having a hearing and a vote right before, or having the hearing at City Council and the vote right after it, you know, we have gone and have a forum and certain committees and allowed individuals to come in and make their voices or opinions heard. I would suggest that would be a better idea if we would take it to legal committee and to have have the legal committee have a forum and open it up to the public instead of having individuals come in and talk for 3 minutes or less, and sometimes not even be able to give their full thought. That perhaps would be a better idea for the public to be able to come in and give their opinions.
Councilor, you actually have kind of reading my mind a little bit. I was thinking along similar lines. Actually, I was thinking of a workshop for a larger discussion, input from the public and all the councilors. And as a workshop, we could hear all this and then be prepared for an action. But Council, I would remind us all, this is all we're considering right now is the authority or the approval to advertise for a future public hearing and vote. And let me clarify with Mr. Holloman, we're not saying, or do we say explicitly the future public hearing would be the next city council meeting, or is there some flexibility in that interpretation? Could it be a following month?
There is flexibility for that. Staff just has to be able, because the time frame is we have to be able to publish it with enough notice to make sure that we've hit those deadlines.
Understand. Okay. So I think Councilor Oropesa raises some legitimate concerns, and I've heard concerns from other councilors here. I'd like to explore that with Mr. Nebb, and let's see if we can come up with some other format. But we have a matter before us, and that's authorization or approval to advertise for a future public hearing and vote on proposed ordinance 1811. This can be a voice vote, simply authorizing, Counselor Stubbs, you snuck in there. Counselor, go ahead.
That's not, my motion was to hold a public hearing in March, so if you'd like me to amend my motion.
I would like that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to amend my previous motion to advertise for a public hearing at a future city council meeting.
Okay, I have a motion by Counselor Stubbs to basically strike the March line from her original motion. Do I have a second for that? I have a second. Counselor Grant. Let's take action on this amendment. Any discussion on this proposed amendment? Seeing none, hearing none, I'll ask for a voice vote. A yes or aye approves the amendment, which removes the reference to the March City Council meeting. A no or nay rejects it. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. I have one no from Councilor Roebuck. I have 9 yeses. Motion passes. We now have an amended motion to approve to advertise for a public hearing and vote. Any further discussion? Seeing no one wishing to sign up, I will ask for a voice vote. A yes or aye approves advertising for a public hearing and vote on proposed ordinance 1811 at a future council meeting. And a yes or aye approves it, a no or nay rejects it. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Hearing none, seeing none, that passes unanimously. Thank you, councilors. Thank you, Mr. Morris. I know, Mr. Nebb, this has been a lot of work for both you and Mr. Morris. I appreciate that. I think we can accommodate the concerns you've heard this evening. Let's work on that. I do need to apologize to the IT staff. Jerry, I'm sorry I was a little bit irate. It's frustrating to try and make sure my counselors have an opportunity to speak, and I was less than gracious. I apologize. Next up, item number 25, Councilor Stubbs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, at the recommendation of the legal committee, I would move to hold a public hearing on proposed ordinance 19-02, modifying the City of Roswell zoning code by including new zoning districts and additional text amendments and providing for severability and effective date.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilor Stubbs and a second by Councilor Foster to authorize advertisement for a future public hearing and vote on proposed ordinance 1902. Mr. Morris.
Good evening. Primary intent of these, the text amendments that are contained in proposed ordinance 1902, basically are intended for establishing new zoning categories for the OMA area, Old Municipal Airport. It also is intended to provide some design guidelines for the Old Municipal Airport properties, and only there. And we really also wanted to rewrite the annexation section to make it clearer and a little bit more consistent, actually more consistent with state statutes. And also we wanted to take care of some of the common everyday issues that our zoning folks come across. And so this particular, first off, the amendments would include these new zoning districts, residential very low. As I said before, our lowest zoning district is rural suburban at a minimum density of 2.5 acres per unit. Then it goes to R1 at 6,000 square feet, so we wanted a couple in between, kind of spaced out a little bit. These would allow for what we call estate-style housing. Residential very low is from 1/2 to 1 acre. Residential low would be the 1/4 to 1/2, and at 1/4 you're at 10,000 square feet, and so it's pretty close to the R1. Residential, or the MXP, is the mixed-use plaza portion of this thing. In addition, we want to include parks and recreation, because if you look at their zoning map, you don't see any parks and recreation, even though we used to have it in the zoning districts, and for some reason we took it out. It really needs to be there. It adds to the the story of Roswell having a lot of green space. Institutional is a very common kind of district that you'll find, and basically it's for universities, schools, government facilities, this sort of thing. Our current zoning map, NIMI's an R1. Well, NIMI is not an R1. And so it needs a district that's more consistent with that. We also added some definitions. As I said, we rewrote the annexation section, and we did add a section for some design criteria for some of the properties inside OMA. These amendments were written over the last 2.5 years. These were reviewed by Planning and Zoning Commission monthly last summer, starting last summer in July through December, and along with 2 workshops. And what was happening was we basically would go through a section, and the Planning and Zoning Commission would approve the first cut at this thing and then the next block. And so during that time, it took them 6 months to go through these. Now, we did have more portions. We had additional text in there that when we started this process, but we found some of the issues were bogging us down because the real intent is to get to the OMA zoning districts. And so, but we're going to bring some of these back in more of a topical kind of sound bites back to planning and zoning. The one issue that's problematic has been the oversized vehicles in the residential areas, RVs and fifth wheels and some really big personal trucks, and so we're going to have to really go through that. Legal Committee heard this on January 31st and recommended approval 3-0 at their meeting at that time. And I'll stand for any questions.
All right, Councilor Stubbs, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I first wanted to thank Mr. Morris and the Planning and Zoning Commission. They've spent a great deal of time on this, obviously, and really looked through it. The other thing I wanted to do is encourage council to look at this document. Mr. Morris has included 137 pages of the entire zoning code, and
you can read this.
yes. And I think it's really important. He's highlighted, of course, the changes that legal is recommending, but I think it's important to see it in context in the whole code, so I appreciate that. But just the highlighted parts are the new. Thank you.
Okay, I have Councilor Grant. Councilor Grant, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Morris, so this is just for the OMA, correct?
Correct. Now, with the exception of the Parks and Rec and the institutional districts, but those other categories are only going to be going in here unless somebody wants to do a residential very low subdivision somewhere. The intent was originally to here, but Parks and Rec, we would basically go and plop this out on all the parks so they show up on the zoning map as green spaces all throughout the city.
What's that property to the north of this that we don't own?
Eden.
What's its zone, though?
I believe it's R1.
R1. And then my other question is on this residential low that we have in the top right-hand corner, like the 19th. I think we still are having discussions ongoing with the baseball facility type of stuff. And I know one map that I think you presented to us had it up in that area.
We've actually done an assessment of future parking needs for the Cielo Grande, or how much parking is there now, how much more can we add?
The baseball fields.
At the baseball fields?
We talked about, the 2 leagues now are talking about, trying to come up with the master plan for the city on that stuff. And I think you had presented up here around 19th and Nevada area, possibly it going even up in that location. So my question just is if we do that, we have to go through a whole, what's the process if we end up needing to move that to Parks and Rec?
They would basically be a zoning change through planning and zoning, and it changes. I mean, the zoning actually is very simple in our system here. In most places, planning and zoning is a recommending body that it comes to the city council and then it takes 2 readings, and we have a very simplified way with just going to planning and zoning. So it's a very quick fix. If there's expansion northward, we just change that map.
Okay, because that's just my only concern. I don't have a problem with anything pretty much to the west of Nevada. Just that's the only thing on the east side of Nevada that we would have. And you were getting into parking at Cielo Grande. Go ahead and hit on that topic since that's an issue down there too.
Right. You see Nevada basically is being proposed to be brought straight down, not curving around. And so we did an assessment. We figured we can add, it's almost like another 600 or 700 spaces in the block that you see on the west side of Nevada. Originally, the residential was going to, or the residential part would go all the way to Nevada, but we're going to keep that as a reserve for parking, and it will add, we can also add additional parking spaces down below the existing fields. And Mr. Burris and I have looked at this, and we've got a lot of spaces that we can put out there, almost 2,000 if we wanted to. So we've accommodated that. We're setting that part aside, and we feel that'll be accommodating all of the future needs for Cielo Grande.
Well, I like it. Did we ever finish the overlay project that we all worked on out there?
It's actually in the process. We're actually going through the platting now, working up the plats that would break this up into break the cookie up into the big pieces, and working with our surveyors right now and getting them all laid out, the width of the roads, that sort of thing. We've been working on that. Actually, we're pretty close to being finalized.
Okay, but I'll just say again, my only concern is that on the east side of Nevada, I don't want to see us put in too much work until we identify what we're doing as a city with the baseball facilities that I know those two groups are talking about.
And that particular area is problematic anyway because of all the weird stuff that's already in there. Right. And plus the flowway that goes through there, the natural drainage that goes from the northwest. You can kind of see it looks like a big runway comes through there in the orange. So there's a lot of limitations in there. So we're not rushing to go into that part yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I have no one else on my list. Councilors, this is simply considering an approval to advertise for a future public hearing and vote on proposed ordinance 1902. A yes or aye approves it, a no or nay rejects it. This will be a voice vote. Once again, an aye or yes approves authorizing for a future public hearing and vote on proposed ordinance 1902. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Hearing none, seeing none, passes unanimously. Next up, item number 26.
Hello again.
Oh, wait a second. We need to get a motion, don't we? Sorry. Hey, I'm getting a little old too. I know, but I've been like Mr. Nebb raised the point. It's been a long week already. All right. Councilor Stubbs, I apologize, Ms. Gilbert.
Sorry. Mr. Mayor, this is at the recommendation of both the General Services and the Legal Committee that I move to approve service agreements, a service agreement including Appendix A scope of services between the city and the Boys and Girls Club of Sierra Blanca for a term of 3 years commencing December 1st, 2018 through November 30th, 2021, with 4 one-year options to renew at an annual amount of $32,000 on a reimbursement basis.
All right, I have a motion by Councilor Stubbs and a second by Councilor Foster to discuss and consider approval of the Boys and Girls Club of Sierra Blanca Scope of Services Agreement. Ms. Gilbert.
Before I get into the details of the agreement, I have Tim Coughlin here from the Boys and Girls Club who's going to go through just a brief update of what's been going on with the club the last year and some fun stuff they have coming up.
I want to say good morning, Mayor, but it's still evening. So you guys will probably still be here in the morning, but I'll be hopefully at home. So the Boys and Girls Club, let's see. Oops, there it goes. Okay, so Boys and Girls Club of Sierra Blanca. My name is Tim Coughlin. I'm the CEO of Boys and Girls Club of Sierra Blanca. However, Sierra Blanca is not the correct name. We have a filing up with the Secretary of State. We've been approved by Boys and Girls Clubs of America. As promised, we are changing the name of our organization to better reflect the communities that we're serving. The new name is Boys and Girls Clubs of Chavez and Lincoln Counties. The numbers. So as you know, October of 2017, we acquired the Roswell club site. So we now have clubs both in Roswell and Ruidoso. Total staff members are 17 at this point. We have 67 volunteers. We have 361 active members between the two clubs. We have 175 youth that are being served through community outreach, which includes our summer food program. Makes a total of 1,436 total youth served. During 2018, we served 45,778 meals. That is after-school snacks. That's Wednesday, we serve a full meal to the kids. And then during the summer, we do both a lunch and a snack Monday through Friday. So some of the programs we do, we have a CYFD mentoring grant right now that we're working with the CYFD department. We provide Smart Moves, which is kind of like the Nike thing, just say no, but this is more how to develop healthy relationships, how to be better in communications and working with other members. Power Hour is our homework and tutoring program. We have an opioid abuse prevention program that is coming down. It was held up with the government shutdown, but it's now flowing forward through the state. We'll be getting that one going soon. Our OJP mentoring grant, that we just got the letter of agreement on. That was signed today, and that will be going back, and that is to mentor additional mentoring both here in Roswell and Ruidoso. We also have arts and crafts programs, and we have the Triple Play, which is the mind, body, and soul. And part of Triple Play takes into account some of those other programs and also gets them the physical exercise that they need to keep their bodies healthy. So one of the things we said is we will redevelop our board. We're in the middle of a board transformation project. Phase 2 is coming up next month. So our board currently is Mr. Jim Matusi. You guys probably know him. He is the chairman of the board of Bank of the Southwest and owner of Majestic Radios. Mr. Barry Foster is a council member sitting right up here, as well as a school teacher. Aaron Emmert is the CFO for Pioneer Bank, located here in Roswell. Brenda Kazabowski is a retired teacher. Wendy Hewlett is Director of Nursing at Lincoln County Medical Center. Debbie Lee is the village manager of Ruidoso. Carolyn Madison is a CPA here in Roswell. And Mark Murphy is the president of Strata Production. I think you have to admit, those are some strong people there, and they are keeping me on my toes. I love it. They ask a lot of questions, and we're moving forward. We are planning a strategic planning meeting coming up soon so that we can develop the plan for the next 3 years. Mr. Mayor, thank you again for volunteering to be one of the judges for our Youth of the Year program, which we hosted here in Roswell. Out of that program, we had Miss Ami B. from Ruidoso is our Youth of the Year, and Autumn H. here from Roswell. She's the Junior Youth of the Year. Both of these individuals would be going up to Buffalo Thunder Resort on March 8th and 9th to compete for the statewide level of Youth of the Year. Junior Youth of the Year stops at the state level. The Youth of the Year program, that continues on. The winner from the state level will go on to the regional level, compete at that place. They can earn $30,000 to $40,000 worth of scholarships there. The regional winners, and there's 5 regions in the state, they move forward to national. Those 5 individuals get to meet the president, members of Congress, all the celebrity alumni, and have an opportunity to win $100,000 in scholarships and a new Toyota car. Great opportunities for the kids in the program. So Roswell, what's going on here? We hosted the Organizational Youth of the Year here at the Roswell Country Club, great venue that we had. We brought back the community Thanksgiving dinner. We had about 300 people that showed up for that this year. We've painted some of the interior areas through the help of the United Way. We've established a garden in the old pool. We planted about 1/3 of it this year, and we're hoping to expand that even more next year. We started a recycling program to teach the kids about recycling plastics and aluminum and things like that to divert from going into the landfill. We grew our average daily attendance. About a year ago, we were at 23 kids. Now we're running about 63 kids a day. We've expanded van service so we can pick up from more schools. Just this year, we're now at 77 registered members. We have 3 vans now. Driving home one night, I love the drive back to Ruidoso from Roswell. It gives me a chance to think. We had a van sitting over there that doesn't get used during the school year. And it's like, why is that just sitting there? So what we've done is we've taken that van, moved it over here to Roswell. So we now have 3 vans to be out picking up kids from, I believe it's 7 different schools? 9 schools, sorry. Natasha Welt is our unit director here. She knows some of the more detailed information about that. We are advertising for a new position, so that means we're growing. We've got a couple of positions and 1 new one that's coming. Some of the things we have planned is we want to reestablish a teen program, and we want to expand the after-hours use of the gym doing athletic programs. Those are both contingent upon the CDBG project that's slated for the club. Once we can get that going, the energy efficient lighting will allow us to be able to run more programs more efficiently. Those 400 to 500 watt bulbs in there just suck up the energy. It's something fierce when we get that bill. So that is really quick. I was told to make it quick, and that's what's going on. If you have any questions, I will stand for any questions.
Ms. Gilbert, you want to talk about the agreement that's before us?
So tonight you have the scope of services agreement under consideration. The facility, however, is leased by the Boys and Girls Club of Sierra Blanca, to change soon. The lease agreement has been in place for a little over a year now, and it is in your packet just for your reference. The service agreement, however, focuses more on the programmatic services and the expectations that the city has for the Boys and Girls Club and what they're doing in the facility, and it also allocates funding to support those activities. This agreement actually went through 2 committees. It started in general services, and there they voted to increase the allotted funding in the agreement. Originally it was $20,000, and they wanted to increase it to $32,000 to be paid on a quarterly basis. So that is what you have before you tonight. The legal committee reviewed that and supported that change to the funding level. $20,000 is currently budgeted in the FY19 approved budget. If we pay on the quarterly basis, that would mean there's 2 quarterly payments within this fiscal year, which would mean $8,000 per payment, $16,000. So we would have enough funding to support the cost of the agreement, even with the increase in this fiscal year. Going forward in FY20, we'd want to make sure to budget the full $32,000. Just to note, legal committee, when they reviewed the agreement, did add some reporting requirements. So there's a section in there for that. There is already reporting requirements under the lease agreement, but these just add on for the purposes of the reimbursement to submit with the invoice that they'll send quarterly. The deputy city attorney has reviewed and approved the language you have before you, as well as the club has accepted the language and are comfortable with it. General Services Committee voted 3-0 to recommend approval on their January 23rd meeting, and Legal Committee voted 3-0 as well to recommend approval at its January 31st meeting. So with that, I stand for any questions.
All right, I have Councilors Foster, Grant, and Oropesa. Councilor Foster, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. And as our CEO, Mr. Coughlin, already informed you, I just wanted to let the council know that I am the vice chair, and that's the weakest link on that board. We do have some really great members, except for our vice chair. And so I wanted to let the public and get it on out there that I am, and since our CEO already did that, it is great to be on that board to see what we're doing, and I do thank you. I don't know how you could have judged those, because I listened to all 3 of them and was like, well, all 4 of them, but the one youth of the year didn't have anyone competing, but the 3 juniors were just amazing to see that. Were they 11 years old or 10?
Youngest was 10.
10, and they were standing up in a crowd of at least triple this and speaking way better than I could ever, even now. They were doing great. So, but I didn't envy you having to judge those 3. But
you owe me.
I know. I figured. But thanks.
On that note, Mr. Holloman, I should have raised this issue. Do you have any concerns or comments regarding Councilor Foster's on this volunteer board where, if I'm not mistaken, there is no compensation continuing on this, enacting in this?
The only restrictions whenever somebody is voting is for whenever they're personally receiving anything. So if it's a volunteer board where he's not receiving any compensation, he doesn't need to recuse himself.
Okay. I wanted to get that in the record too. I figured, but I want to do this in the open, so I appreciate that. All right, I have Councilor Grant, Oropesa, and Peterson. Councilor Grant, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say it's good to see. Looks like you got a really good board in place, and I know they can help you do many things. I enjoy all the programs you bring, but I really want to get it back, and I know that's in your plans is the sports stuff, because I know growing up, that's why I went over there, and which brings me to another topic. I don't think Jim's in here. The baseball field right there.
Jim kind of mentioned that to me, and it's something that we did discuss at one of our board meetings. However, the Eastside Little League disbanded, we'll call it, right before the new season started, so there was not enough time to do anything this year. It's something that we definitely can look at doing. We want to be back in the light of the community and the center of the community, so it's something to definitely consider.
And I'm not saying start a new league or whatever.
No.
Yeah.
But something to
utilize
make use of that.
Utilize that facility just so it doesn't go unused. And then I know we've had challenges with, because the other two leagues absorbed Eastside District, and the turnout has been low with those kids signing up. And what we're learning a little bit is a lot of there's a good chunk of kids right there that only walk, that don't have transportation or parents to take them. So that's why I just say, that'd be a good hub for the sports stuff. They used to have a great basketball program, boxing, I think even football at one point, but I would just encourage, because I think that's just a good draw for all those kids, especially losing that walking ability for the Little League.
Right, and one of the things that we definitely want to do is see how we can improve availability and not compete with other existing programs.
Right. Well, and I just say that on the basketball. I hope the basketball gets a lot better here, but the last couple of years, I mean, it's a 6-week season lately without a facility.
Okay.
Which is extremely lacking for a community our size, and many communities now have 3 or 4 basketball seasons throughout the year. So. And that's how Boys and Girls Club used to be, is they used to work at a different time than the city season, so you had a lot of participation in both of them.
Traditionally, Boys and Girls Clubs were heavily involved in sports. They've moved away from that.
Because the grant money is not tied to sports anymore.
Pretty much, it's now tied more into educational type activities, but it is something that's also very important. It teaches a lot of kids discipline, self-confidence, teamwork, some of those things that transcend not just sports, but into business as well.
Right, absolutely. So just thank you for what you're doing, and keep going.
Thank you.
I have Councilor Oropesa, Peterson, and Best. Councilor Oropesa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think you have done a great job in bringing that facility back up, or not the facility itself, but the organization back to where it belongs. Just out of curiosity, not that it really matters, but how many kids in the neighborhood are participating in the program?
I would have to ask Natasha. Do you have any idea?
Honestly,
None.
My question would be why, I mean.
I from what I know, is talking to some people that have been there for a while, and you have been one of them, and I appreciate that. The demographics of the neighborhood have changed quite a bit. There's less families there. And also it seems to me that what happens in a lot of communities now is people tend to have their kids come home, and they are what we traditionally used to call latchkey kids, and it's just a matter of getting out and getting that. Part of it is building that infrastructure that we've been building slowly to be able to handle capacity. And right now we're at about our limit as far as capacity, as far as the funding allows, as far as the staffing allows. And that is something that definitely I would love to do, is be able to get more kids from the neighborhood. We're also, Mr. Foster's not aware, but there's going to be a proposal at the next board meeting that we need to look forward to the future and how we're going to handle some stuff. Because as you're probably aware, there was a minimum wage bill that passed the House up in Santa Fe yesterday. and how is that going to affect us, and how are we going to adopt that? There's some proposals for even stronger scholarship opportunities for those families from lower income, so that they can attend and not have to worry about those expenses.
So I guess my question would be, what kind of efforts are you making to try and get the kids in the neighborhood to attend, if you indeed you are making any effort?
To be perfectly honest with you, we haven't been making a lot of efforts into attracting kids from the local community, because we've got so many from the schools that are contacting us and want to come through those efforts. Right now, like I said, we're pretty much at capacity for our staffing level, and it's a matter of hiring, providing the funding, hiring additional people. One of the security things within Boys and Girls Club is the staffing level needs to be 1 to 15. So that means we have 1 staff member for every 15 kids. So as we increase those numbers, that's an additional staff member needs to be brought on, and finding those funds to be able to pay for that. There's other programs that sometimes have 20, 25, 30 kids per staff member, but one of the requirements through Boys and Girls Club is a much more conservative approach for that. It's something that now that we have the capacity with the vans, we've been utilizing that to make that more efficient use of our resources. But as we now are pretty much limited with the vans, the next push would be for local kids that we can get to come by. There's a few that, and I don't know where they live, that parents actually bring them and drop them off. But other than that, the majority of the kids all come on the vans.
Because my understanding is one of the reasons that the Boys and Girls Club facility is there was to address the low-income kids to be able to participate. And if that is not happening, I don't see why we would have that facility in that area, because that is, as far as I know, that it was one of the primary reasons to establish the Boys and Girls Club in that part of town, was to address the issues of the kids that weren't able to attend other facilities, that they would be able to be within walking distance and so forth. And so my hope is that the next time that we hear from you is that there will be efforts made to be able to address the need to bring the neighborhood kids in there. Not that the other ones do not matter, because they all matter. But again, the primary focus, as far as I know, that the facility is there, was to address the issues with the low-income kids.
And from that standpoint, I will tell you, Counselor, we don't turn away anybody for lack of the ability to pay. We do work with parents. We've got some, in fact, I can't talk specifically about what we do with our scholarships, but we have never turned anyone away for lack of ability to pay. So as far as low income, we do definitely address that. What you're getting at is the local kids that live in those communities, and yes, we need to do a better job of that.
Yeah, and I'm not insinuating that you're turning away.
No. I just wanted to make it clear as far as low income.
Yeah, my issue is that, again, there's kids in the neighborhood that perhaps don't know of what the policy is or whatever, that I think that getting advertisement out there to those particular kids to try and get them in, whether they walk or they get, the parents take them or you pick them up on a bus or whatever the case may be. But again, my concern is that we hope that we address the needs for those low-income kids that maybe some of them can pay, maybe some of them cannot pay, but again, at least give them the opportunity to be able to attend.
Yes, I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have Counselor Peterson and then Counselor Best. Counselor Peterson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say thank you for coming in here and doing what you're doing. The Boys and Girls Club is very important. I think that the city in the future should look at funding it even more. That way we can get more teens involved and, you know, the drug, you know, the program you had with the drugs, I think is extremely important in Roswell. There's a lot of teenagers on drugs right now, and I just want to say thank you.
All right, I have Counselor Best, and that exhausts my list. Counselor, you have the floor.
I'd like to say the same thing as Mr. Peterson on one thing. Thank you for coming in and taking such a big bite of what we needed and fixing it, because it needed fixed. The young lady in the back, your name, please? Miss Natasha. What schools do we pull from? What schools are you picking up every day?
And state your name for the record.
Natasha Welt, and I'm the unit director there. We pick up from Pecos Elementary, Missouri Avenue, Valley View, Washington, Mesa, Sierra, Gateway, Emmanuel Lutheran, Del Norte. We also have parents drop off from Brendo Mid, Sunset Elementary, and Mountain View.
Okay, you know your stuff. Thank you very
You're welcome.
much. As you know, our history with the Boys and Girls Club hasn't been very good. Miss Judy, I would like to thank you very much for putting the reporting requirements in there, because I think they need to be there. The board we have now, from what I see, is just amazing. It's the next board that comes up, so forth and so on. And we do need those reporting requirements and things like that, because we didn't have them before. And that slippery slope, we don't want to go back there. So thank you very much.
Yes, and we were fully accepting of the changes, and I in fact suggested the quarterly payments. You don't want to get to a situation where you're making one annual payment and then partway through the year something happens and you don't provide this, you don't get the services you paid for. So, and from the reporting aspect, I'm providing those reports to the board all the time anyway, so we're more than happy to share anything with you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I have Counselor Moore. Counselor, you have the floor.
Good evening. I also want to say thank you. The Boys and Girls Club, first of all, I would like the name change. I appreciate that. The Boys and Girls Club has meant a lot to me and my son Dontrell. He grew up there playing there, and he learned a lot of things being able to play sports there and become the man that he is. And I wanted to appreciate, you know, from whence we've come. I also understand the need for getting more kids in, but with more kids, it requires what? More money. And so everybody wants more kids or reaching out or do some outreach programs. We have to put our money where our mouth is. And so if we're thinking they need all these things and we want to be a part of, then we need to be a part of the funding increase. And so that is where if we're going to say that's what's about the kids and about the programs, starting those new programs costs money. Rebuilding or fixing up the baseball field requires money. And so if those are some things that the city thinks they should be involved, the city should think that they should involve a little more money. And so I think that's where I stand with that. If we're going to say that we need to do these things, then we need to be able to back what we say, because we know you want those things, and we as a city want them also. We want some safe place for our kids to go. I still think we need a pool there, but I'm over that almost. But there's just so much going on in that little neighborhood, and the vernacular of that neighborhood has changed. It used to be a rough neighborhood, a bunch of children. There's not as much kids in that neighborhood as there used to be. But I just kind of think if we want to improve the program and what's going on there, we have to increase our funding that we want to provide to you. And maybe that can be part of our budget for next year, to increase it just a little bit more so that you can go get 10 more children or go canvass the neighborhood and get a few more children.
Thank you, Counselor. I have no one else on my list. At this point, I will call for a vote. It will be, excuse me, voice vote. A yes or I approves the service agreement, scope of service agreement between the City of Roswell and the Boys and Girls Club. A no or nay rejects it. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, seeing none, passes unanimously. Next up, item number 27. Councilor Oropesa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move for approval, or first of all, based on the recommendation of the Infrastructure Committee, I move for approval for the award of the proposed Wells Street Railroad crossing work to Constructors Incorporated of Carlsbad, New Mexico, in the amount of $132,549.30, which includes bonds and tax. Bonds cost at 1.5%, and New Mexico gross receipts tax at 7.8333%. And work will utilize existing CES contract issued to Constructors Incorporated.
I have a motion by Councilor Oropesa and a second by Councilor Henderson to approve the award of proposed Wells Street Railroad crossing work to Constructors, Inc. of Carlsbad. Ladies and gentlemen, I had to ask Mr. Nahar to brief us on this instead of Mr. Stark, because there's no propellers involved in this. Go ahead, Mr.
Choo-choo. All right, we're talking about a railroad crossing. Just to remind everybody that from at least the highway 285 into the base, to the REAC, that is a city-owned spur. This location is on Wells Street. It's basically the southeast corner of the residential area, or about a block and a half north of the water tower. The reason we need this work is to repair the railroad crossing. This track needs repair to continue to safely serve Ergon, which is the supplier of asphalt emulsions. The track services Ergon site from the north, which is the back of Ergon's complex. What they sell are road emulsions. We used Ergon oil or emulsion. You see it every time you drive on North Main from Country Club to College. That little bit that we did, that emulsion came from Ergon. Here's a picture that I took in 2016. We've been looking at this since 2016. It's not the road crossing that's the problem. It's the railroad crossing, and it just needs repair. It's real loose for the trucks that are serving the asphalt railroad cars that are serving Ergon. This is the technical part. Basically, they're going to tear it all down and start from the bottom up and redo the tracks. They'll also do the approaches 30 foot on either side of crossing. I'm going to take a little jab at Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad right now. Notice city projects, we do about 30 feet. They do about 2 feet. I apologize for Atkinson. It is city crews that put out the rough road signs, and we're trying to get them to fix it. And if they don't fix it, we'll probably have to spend some money, and we'll have to do the job ourselves, as they say. Work will require temporary closure of wells during construction, again, depending how long to get the materials and that kind of stuff. Here's a slide, a bigger, showing you where Hobson Road is up on top, where Ergon is, and how the railroad track feeds in from the north, which is the back of Ergon. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from Mr. Nahar? Seeing none, I will ask for a voice vote. A yes or aye approves the award of the proposed Wells Street Railroad crossing work to Constructors, Inc. of Carlsbad. A no or nay rejects the award. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, seeing none, passes unanimously. Councilor, just once again, item number 28 was acted upon as item 22A. Item number 29, Councilor Oropesa.
Thank you, Mayor. I move we go into closed session pursuant to NMSA 1978, sections 10-15-1H5, to discuss bargaining strategy to collective bargaining negotiations between the City Council and a bargaining unit representing the employees of the city, and also pursuant to New Mexico NMSA 1978, sections 10-15-1H7, to discuss matters of attorney-client privilege pertaining to threatened or pending litigation in which the public body is or may become a participant relating to code enforcement actions of property located on West McGaffey Street, and also pursuant to New Mexico NMSA 1978, Section 1015-8, 1015-1H8, to discuss the purchase, acquisition, and disposal of real estate property located at the RIAC.
I have a motion by Counselor Oropesa and a second by Counselor Peterson to go into closed session for the reasons listed. This is a roll call vote. A yes or aye approves us going into closed session. A no or nay rejects it, and we remain in public hearing. Once again, a yes or aye approves going into closed session. A no or nay rejects it. Ms. Call, please call the roll.
Counselor Best?
Yes.
Counselor Oropesa?
Yes.
Counselor Henderson? Yes. Counselor Moore? Yes. Counselor Sanchez?
Yes.
Counselor Foster?
Yes.
Counselor Stubbs?
Yes.
Counselor Grant?
Yes.
Counselor Roback? Yes. Counselor Peterson? Yes. Motion passes.
Thank you. Councilors, I have 8:52. We will recess, reconvene in closed session in our room over here at 9 o'clock. We have 8 minutes, so we're recessing now at 8:52. I don't know either, but I don't want to
make it almost have a consent or something.
Good, good. That one works.
That's mine, that's what I.
It's true, huh? I'm just kidding.
Just give me